We are Newsroom. Hello and welcome from Johannesburg here in South Africa. My name, of course, Eben Jensen. The show is live and broadcast to you from our studios right here in Auckland Park in Johannesburg. Now, between 9 and 12 every weekday morning, we're live on air. We're also streaming live on our YouTube channel. You can watch us back a little bit later in the day if you've missed anything. Our question of the day today: the world has lost a great one. Yes, the great is appropriate in this case. Jonah Lomu passed away. Probably the greatest rugby player of all time. How do you remember Jonah Lomu, the man that lit up the 1995 Rugby World Cup right here in South Africa? It was a wonderful moment for all of us. Our question is, how do you remember Jonah Lomu? Send us it at SABC Newsroom and we'll have a little chat around that a bit later in the show. First though, there's some news to be had. Albert's president is standing by with an update.
Thank you, Eben. Let's take a look at all your headlines. Gunfires erupted in a North Paris suburb as special police forces launched an operation to catch one of the suspects believed to be behind last week's terror attacks. Business in South Africa and the Kingdom of the Netherlands have signed 15 cooperation agreements in Johannesburg last night. And the political body of the International Criminal Court, the ICC, is convening in The Hague in the Netherlands with pressure building on its relationship with African countries. Those and more stories coming up, but first let's find out from Kendall Bakamate what's happening on the sports front. A very good morning to you.
Good morning, Elvis, and good morning to you at home as well. This is what we've got in store for you in the sports today. All Black great and rugby legend Jonah Lomu has died, aged 40, while waiting for a second kidney transplant. Bafana make it to the next round of the Russia 2018 World Cup qualifiers as they beat Angola 1-0 last night and 4-1 on aggregate. Also, the weather in Bangalore has the final word in the second test between India and South Africa as the match gets called off. All this and more later on in the sports bulletin, around about 10:20 or so. Back to you, Elvis.
Thank you, Kendall. Let's start off with our top story this morning. French authorities say there is a police standoff between suspects and police in what is reportedly a raid at an apartment in the northern suburbs of Saint-Denis in Paris. 3 people have been arrested and 2 police officers wounded. Police sources say the shooting is connected to the hunt for fugitives linked to the Paris terrorist attack last week, which claimed more than 130 lives. It is reported that some police had been wounded during the operation, which took place near the Stade de France, the sports stadium there, where 3 suicide bombers detonated their explosive belts and killed a passerby on Friday. Earlier, security sources said surveillance video showed a possible 9th assailant during the attacks. Investigators said that the Paris plot was hatched in Syria and nurtured in Belgium. The Islamic State group has claimed responsibility for the attacks. Police officials say that the operation is directly related to the attacks, and an ongoing manhunt for 2 more suspects they believe have been involved. Meanwhile, 2 Air France flights en route to Paris from the United States were diverted on Tuesday following anonymous bomb threats. The airline and the Federal Aviation Administration says passengers and crew were safely removed. An FAA spokesperson says an Airbus A380 that departed from Los Angeles landed in Salt Lake City, where passengers and crew were taken off the plane and escorted into the terminal. A separate flight that left Dulles International Airport outside Washington, D.C. was diverted to Halifax International Airport, where passengers and crew had disembarked. In a brief statement, Air France said that both flights had been the subject of anonymous threats received after their respective takeoffs. Security officials have been on high alert since last week's deadly attacks in Paris. The political body of the International Criminal Court will meet in The Hague from Wednesday as tensions grow over the court's relationship with Africa. Kenya is sending a large delegation of MPs to lobby for changes to how the court works, while South Africa is likely to raise its desire to leave the ICC. Our correspondent Jack Parrock is at the Assembly of State Parties in The Hague.
Delegations from across the 123 countries who are signed up to the International Criminal Court's jurisdiction are meeting here at the World Forum in the Netherlands, in The Hague, to discuss how the court operates and what can be changed. Now, the Kenyan delegation, they're going to be pushing hard for changes to how witnesses are dealt with and how witnesses are brought to the court and whether that should be audited. They're talking about that in regards to the case of Deputy Kenyan President William Ruto, who's still on trial here at the court for crimes against humanity linked to the post-election violence in Kenya of 2007. The case against President Kenyatta, remember, was dropped a year ago, just over a year ago, in The Hague. For a lack of evidence, and the Kenyan government says that is pushing, in fact, for this case against William Ruto and Joshua Sang, a Kenyan journalist, to be dropped. Now, from a South African point of view, there's been some concerns in South Africa and some pressure for the country to withdraw from the ICC following the debacle over South Africa not arresting and transferring ICC-indicted Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir to The Hague when he visited an AU summit in Johannesburg back in June. There's been a spat between the court and the South African government over that issue, and we're really looking forward to hear what the Minister for International Relations, Maite Nkoana Mashabane, is going to say when she speaks and addresses the General Assembly of the ICC here in The Hague. Jack Parrock, SABC News, The Hague.
We'll try and connect with Jack Parrock a little bit later to give us an update on the issue at The Hague as well as the situation in Paris. An explosion in the Nigerian city of Yola has claimed the lives of more than 30 people and left dozens injured. The blast appeared to have struck a busy market area where traders were closing up for the day. The explosion occurred at a fruit and vegetable market beside a main road in the Jameta area of Adamawa State. There was no immediate claim of responsibility, but the blast bore the hallmarks of the militant group Boko Haram, which has killed thousands over the last 6 years in its bid to create a state adhering to strict Sharia law in the northeast. Yola has twice been hit by deadly bomb attacks this year. The historic relationships between South Africa and the Netherlands were strengthened further with the signing of trading contracts in Johannesburg last night. The Dutch Prime Minister, Mark Rutte, told the businesses about his country's wish to increase the current €3.3 billion investment into this country.
Following the day of political engagements with President Jacob Zuma in Pretoria, it was time to tie a business deal. 15 contracts signed, including the Square Kilometre Array Telescope, also known as SKA. Amsterdam, a strong ally of Pretoria, dating back to the struggle era when Netherlands backed the ANC.
I believe there's room for more. I had very productive meetings with President Zuma and members of his cabinet, and we decided to step up our cooperation even more. At the meeting, we signed bilateral agreements on a range of topics.
The Minister of Small Business, Lindiwe Zulu, encouraged by the Dutch investments as a two-way traffic that will see the country's investors pursuing opportunities in Amsterdam.
I just would like to take a step back because there must be a context of the relationship between South Africa and the Netherlands. The Netherlands supported us in our liberation struggle throughout, and we are happy that they are here today to assist us in the next step, which is now we are a democratic South Africa, and therefore we still need partners who also want to be equal partners with South Africa.
Rutte reminded South Africa that the countries share a common history that can also be turned into a common future.
Now, earlier, President Jacob Zuma called on world leaders to up the ante in the global war on terrorism. He was speaking during the state visit of the Dutch Prime Minister Rutte in Pretoria. Rutte's visit to South Africa has been cut short following the terror attacks in Paris, France. President Zuma says Africa is already doing its bit to tackle terror groups on the continent.
A 19-gun salute kicks off an official visit. But tragic developments elsewhere in Europe hijacked what was to be economy-focused bilaterals.
Well, predictably, the recent terror attacks in Paris dominated the agenda here at the Union buildings.
both countries have now vowed to pool their resources and share expertise and intelligence in the war on terror in Africa and around the globe.
There is a general agreement that everybody else, of course, we could best come together in an organized fashion under the UN system. And that's what we were saying. But we are ready, all of us, to participate in fighting terrorism. As I indicated, and I did indicate in our discussions with the Prime Minister, that even in Africa, there's a big challenge. In North Africa, for an example, the extreme kind of terrorist attacks, undermining of the security, and the AU is working on that.
I believe the attacks in Paris highlight the importance of countries working together in the fight against terrorism. And the Netherlands and South Africa are doing precisely, exactly that, together with many other nations.
But President Zuma warns that continuous foreign interference in independent states in the Middle East is one of the root causes behind the formation of global terror organizations.
It is our strong belief that the interference by outside parties in some countries and the pursuit of the regime change doctrine has perpetuated a cycle of conflict and instability in many parts of North Africa and the Middle East. The preference for military action instead of political solutions becomes a breeding ground for violent extremism and terrorism.
Trade between the Netherlands and South Africa has consistently grown since 2010, from 27 billion to 48 billion rand in 2014. Dumalo Mohlaudi, SABC News, Pretoria.
And that's your news for now. Eben Janssen is standing by with more interviews and analysis on the other side.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jarvis. Time for us to shift our focus to what is happening here in South Africa now. The continent's largest producer of maize will be a net importer of maize for the first time in 7 years. Severe droughts in several parts of the country this year has negatively affected maize crops. Grain SA estimates that government will have to import around 770,000 tons of maize as the cost of around 2.2 billion rand as farmers continue to grapple with what is now known as the worst drought in 23 years. Drought disasters have already been declared in 5 provinces: KwaZulu-Natal, the Free State, Northwest, Limpopo and Mpumalanga. Recent rains are likely to not bring the relief the farmers need for now. Grain South Africa's Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Jannie de Villiers, joins us from our studio in Pretoria to give us a little update as to where we are right now. Very good morning to you, Mr. de Villiers. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Eben. Thank you very much.
Mr. de Villiers, what's the latest with regards to, let's start with the imports of maize to South Africa. Just give us a quick overview.
Yeah, Eben, we are short about 750,000 tons of the past crop. And we have imported about 500,000 tons thus far. Most of it is yellow maize. I think there was only 1 cargo of white maize. But there's plenty of stocks available in the world. But obviously we would have preferred not to import that. But there won't be a shortage of food. But at the moment, the farmers need to plant, especially to the eastern side of the country, you know, Mpumalanga, KZN. Those areas need to plant, the Eastern Free State. And their best period or window of opportunity to plant is actually concluded in the middle of November. And we haven't had rain, and the farmers have planted despite the fact that there wasn't rain. So the last few days we had 10 millimeters or so, and that might, let the maize plants just survive. But I think it is very late for this season, and if they don't plant now, they will get frost like in April and maybe end of March, and this is why the farmers can't plant later than this in the east.
Tell us about the rain. We've seen rain, scattered rain all over the province now. There's also rain predicted for the next 6 days. Do you think that this will be the relief? If we have rain for the next 6 days, this would be the relief that the farmers need?
Even because last year we had we were very short of rain, so the moisture levels are very low, and I don't think this little scattered showers at the moment will be sufficient, for us to have a decent crop or decent start of the season. It's already like a month late, and I think the little bit that we got, I looked this morning, I think the Mpumalanga area got about 10 millimeters, fairly general, but in the northwest there hasn't been any rain. There's some patchy, here and there, some little bits, but definitely not enough. We need like 30 to 60 millimeters just to get the planting process underway. In the northwest we can still plant until, let's say, about Christmas time, middle of December. That would still be okay.
What about the price of maize and other related products going into the festive season? How is this going to be affected?
Yeah, last year in February, when we saw that we're not gonna have a decent crop and we're gonna have to start importing, the prices went up about between 60 and 70%. So there were substantial increases. Now those increases hasn't gone through to the consumers in general. I think if we look at maize meal, it went up by about 14%, but there's already resistance in the consumption, just with that little increase, and there's still some to come. When you look at, processed products like eggs and poultry, dairy and meat, those have increased to a lesser extent because the value chain is a little bit longer as well. But I think there's still some increases to come to the consumer, so it's not going to be a nice festive season as far as that's concerned.
It almost seems like it's going from bad to worse. The rand is also expected to go to around 15 to the dollar if the Fed increases its rates in America. At 15 to 1 in December, how do you expect that to play out with the imports of maize and then also the price that we'll see?
Yeah, even the rand is impacting on our prices. For instance, we're always short in wheat. So the price is directly derived from the import parity. In other words, the dollar value times the exchange rate. So therefore, all those food prices will have a lot of pressure on it on the raw material side, and then obviously as it goes through to the consumer. So it is definitely not good news. What can happen is if we get general rain in the next 2-3 weeks, for the maize producing areas, then the maize prices will start to drop. And I think that could be the only counter that is counting in favor of the consumers, given the worsening of the rand.
Mr. de Villiers, now we know that maize is our staple and the focus always on maize, but the drought that we are seeing now, low water levels and so on, how is it affecting all the other products and the other plants that you're growing?
Yes, we plant a lot of soya beans in the Mpumalanga area. They've just started planting. We need about, we've produced like 1 million tons last year. We need a little bit more than that. So the farmers would like to expand, but obviously those plants can't, tolerate the heat and the dryness. We plant a lot of sunflower in northwest, so there's still plenty of time to do that. We can even plant sunflower sort of into the first 2 weeks of January maybe. So I think for sunflower it is still okay. Wheat, we had a terrible season. There was a drought in the Western Cape, especially the Swartland area. So we short about 60% of our consumption in wheat because we didn't produce enough. And there's a lot of pressure at the moment on the irrigation guys. Even they're very stable in their production, but there has already been water quotas sending through to the irrigation farmers. And if there's Eskom is not producing electricity, then the pumps can't go either. So there's also a lot of risk in the irrigation areas at the moment.
This disaster, how long do you think it will take for the country to recover from this disaster?
Yeah, even there's still some time, especially for the Free State and the Northwest to grow if there's sufficient rain. If we're going to have a drought, I think this year's biggest challenge will be how are we going to import even more through our ports and with our transportation systems. But if we're going to have a drought this year, which it is sort of predicted at the moment, we still have faith that there will be enough rain. But then we're going to see high food prices, until like the middle of 2017. So I can't see a relief coming. The rain can change it, but if there's no rain or not sufficient rain, we're going to see high food prices until the early months of 2017.
They say this El Nino effect will be with us for a couple of years, Mr. de Villiers, so even that's the bad news. But the farmers, you're talking to the farmers, I'm sure, every day. What are the farmers saying? How are they coping with what's going on right now?
Yeah, the guys are trying to encourage each other. I look on the WhatsApp groups every morning when I wake up. They're already early up and they talk to each other. What was the weather like in their area throughout the country. But it is very tough. Eben, I think, they're all praying for rain. And they have changed their practices. They've changed their varieties that they plant to be more drought tolerant and all of that. But, the plants need rain and you can't grow it without rain. And this is where we need the support of the country in this rally.
Are you happy with the kinds of support that you guys are getting right now?
Not so far. I think especially our black farmers, last year they used a lot of their own money to plant because they can't borrow money. They don't own the land that they're farming. It's mostly communal land or state-owned land. And they used their own money, and last year they didn't have a crop. So those guys are struggling to plant again. And I think we need the government to help us to get those guys going. And obviously the commercial farmers, if they're going to have a drought this year, I think our biggest challenge then is in 2017, even if there's good rains, they might not be able to plant because they won't get crop finance. They're too indebted.
Mr. de Villiers, thank you very much for joining us today. We wish you all the best as the grain farmers of South Africa continue to struggle, says Mr. de Villiers. Well, there is good news. The outlook for the next week or so with regards to rain is quite good here around South Africa. Let's hope that more than 10 millimeters fall a day to try and alleviate the problems that our farmers are facing here in South Africa. Now, the greatest rugby player of all time has passed away. Jonah Lomu. Well, he died at the age of 40 years young last night, overnight really, New Zealand time. He passed away at his Auckland home after returning from Dubai earlier this week, where he had been on holiday with his family. Lomu will be remembered for the 1995 World Cup, where he changed the game single-handedly in full flow. There was no greater sight than Jonah Lomu. Let's have a look at what a saddened rugby world is looking at today. Good morning, All Blacks, saddened by the loss of Jonah Lomu, as they called him in New Zealand. Humble narcissist said that, and I can tell you I've interviewed Jonah Lomu a couple of times, the humblest rugby player that I've ever met. Thabang Sebela talks about shocked by the sad news of Jonah Lomu's passing, the greatest rugby player of my generation. I would say every generation, Thabang. No one has ever had the similar effect that Jonah Lomu has had on the game. Tendai Nyangoni says Jonah Lomu is dead. Another very sad day for New Zealand and world rugby. R.I.P. bro, very New Zealand bro there. Davis Mufaro Mangena says, farewell Jonah Lomu, gone too soon. What an inspiration you were. Absolutely. Glenn Snyders talks about saddened to hear of the passing of one of New Zealand's greatest rugby players today. Rest in peace, Jonah Lomu. Thoughts and prayers go out to his family. Then Joe Latachan says, sad day. Jonah Lomu died a few hours ago. What a species, or what a specimen, I think is what Joe is trying to say. Just the other day, he visited Yust. So we all go. Yes, we all owe this life and our Creator one debt. And that debt will be paid in your lifetime, as we say here in South Africa. We all think of Jonah Lomu today. Don't forget our question of the day. Our question of the day relates to the great man. We want you to tell us, how do you remember Jonah Lomu? I remember him on a cold winter's day in New Zealand, where he ran over the Underwood brothers for England in the World Cup semi-final, and then He ran over South African-born England player Michael Catt twice, I'll tell you, before the halftime whistle even blew in that match. It was a memory that'll stay with me forever, and I can tell you, Jonah Lomu, in that interview after the match, I asked him about records and greatness in his place in history, and he said to me, that's not what I'm about. I'm just happy to play for the black jersey, the humblest servant of the game that I've ever come across. Now, we move on. Our picture of the day comes from Rhodes Must Fall, and it's captioned, Comrades at Stellenbosch putting UCT radicals to shame. Well, I don't know if burning cars and burning shops and burning your own facilities, setting your nation back, if that is the way that we want to make a point, then we are certainly in trouble here in South Africa. Let's not burn our facilities. There are those that come behind you that will have to pay for it. Let's not let them pay for our sins. Anyhow, take a look now at what's happening around the country. We start in Kimberley, where 5 suspects are expected to appear in the magistrate's court on the charge of armed robbery following a cash-in-transit heist. According to the police, more than 10 suspects fled the scene with an undisclosed amount of cash. Then we go to Cape Town, where a number of taxi organizations are marching to the provincial legislature in the city. They say they are happy about the implementation of the My City bus route to Atlantis and Dunoon. That is very typical. We shall not allow competition in a free market economy here in South Africa. Pay us anyhow. Let's take a break. Newsroom will be back with you after this.
I'm Peter Ndoro.
And I'm Production Chetty Miller, SAB Miller, and Hauser Bush InBev. It's something that I need to learn to say more often.
Will together produce around a third of the world's beer.
It is a mouthful.
Have you ever considered skin bleaching?
Nigeria tops the list of African countries with 77% of its women bleaching their skin.
Now I can see that it is not good because it affects my face and some of my body parts.
Thousands of Arab Israelis and Palestinians participated in a big rally.
Flight MH17 was shot down by a Russian-made missile.
How those chips may fall is a prediction best left to the currency of time.
That's Primetime News, Africa Journal, and Your World on SABC News.
Welcome back. You're still in Newsroom here on SABC News. Now, hundreds of people in South Africa die from lightning strikes each year, and worldwide, the number could be as high as 24,000. Now, according to experts, a single lightning bolt has the capacity to constitute the output of a nuclear power station. The South African Weather Service and the Department of Environmental Affairs, together with LIGHTS, the Lightning Interest Group for Health Technology and Science, hosted a one-day conference about lightning specifically. The conference serves as a platform for lightning researchers to share their relevant research within the broader African lightning community. The teams aim to break new ground in the centuries-old study of this complex, all-powerful, and at times mysterious scientific phenomenon. Now, joining us in studio is Dr. Ryan Blumenthal, who is the Chief Coronopathologist. Have I got that right, Dr. Blumenthal?
Yes, that's correct, a coronopathologist.
What is that, and what do you study, and what is the medicine that goes with it?
All right, well, I'm a forensic pathologist, so I work in a mortuary, basically, and do autopsies on unnatural deaths. However, I have an interest in lightning-related deaths. So the correct scientific term for this is coronomedicine or coronopathology, which is the pathology of trauma of lightning on the human or animal body.
That's very, very interesting. Is there anything more you can tell me around this?
Well, we deal with unnatural deaths, so we usually deal with homicide, accidents, suicides, sudden unexpected deaths. But, we do see quite a lot of lightning-related deaths. And, it's just a field of interest for me. And about 10 years ago, I really got into this research studying lightning, and we formed a group called LIGHTS, which is the Lightning Interest Group for Health, Technology and Science. And we want to be lightning cheerleaders for South Africa, Africa, and hopefully the world.
Now, in the last week, Lights and the Department of Environmental Affairs, the Weather Service, you guys had a one-day conference about lightning with the minister. Tell us what happened at this conference then.
Well, it exceeded my expectations. I was absolutely thrilled. I mean, 10 years ago, we had a small group meet in a classroom, and now 10 years later, we had 120 delegates from all walks of life. The Minister of Environmental Affairs, Minister Edna Molewa, came all the way from Germany and spoke at our conference. We had people from all industries, from South African Weather Service, climatologists, mining engineers, photographers, South African Air Force. We had all walks of life. Everyone who's affected by lightning came to our conference, the representatives, and they met in one room and we spoke, because people usually work in silos, and now we managed to get them to interact and, talk to one another.
What were some of the outcomes at the conference then?
Well, firstly, we realized that, lightning has a massive impact on South Africa. From an insurance point of view, it kills about 100 people a year. 7 times as many get injured and survive with many disabilities. It affects lots of industries. And we just realized that, and this is almost completely preventable. Just by understanding some basic facts, all of these injuries and deaths could basically be prevented.
How important is education when it comes to dealing with lightning and in a way bringing down that number that you're talking about?
Absolutely. We launched a website on Thursday called www.lightningsa.org.za, which is an information-rich website which gives information to the general public about this scientific multi-physics phenomenon, which is lightning. So, because there's a lot of misinformation. Almost every culture on Earth have their myths about lightning. And basically all these myths come from an area of, fear. It's telling the next generation, whoa, be careful of this thing, it's dangerous. And we have to respect that. But this website goes out and tells people what the myths are, tells you what to do, in a thunderstorm, etc.
What is the future of lightning in medical science?
All right, good question. It's such a relatively new field, corona medicine and corona pathology. The way it affects the human body, we're still cracking ground here. People that have been struck and that survive have chronic problems throughout their life. Lots of neurological nervous system problems and cardiac problems, and they develop cataracts in their eyes and hearing problems. So it's very, very complex. So, and as I say, these are all basically preventable by sticking to some basic rules. So when thunder roars, go indoors, for example. Know the weather patterns in your area. Give yourself sufficient time to get inside a fully enclosed metallic surface during a thunderstorm.
Will we ever get to a place on this planet where we'd be able to harness the power of lightning, or even predict lightning for that matter?
All right, I'm a human forensic pathologist. I think I'd be in trouble if I were to answer that. But, we live in hope. And, it is a tremendous amount of energy. Lightning can be heard from 25 kilometers away. So, that's just the sound of it, which is a tremendous amount of energy.
What about the way that we in the media deal with lightning and report on lightning and so forth? Are you satisfied that we're doing enough?
Well, I think obviously we can always do better and we can always do more. I'd love to see lightning cheerleading reach all corners of our country. And whether this is by wrap-around banners on buses or street theatre in rural areas or, through cell phone technology. We must find innovative ways of, teaching lightning safety and lightning awareness to the furthest reaches of our country and, Africa and the world. So we have still a long way to go, and we can obviously do much better.
On that note, who are the most at risk, do you think?
Well, that's the thing. We are all at risk when you're outdoors. It's completely anonymous. It's random. It hits all cultures. When you're outdoors, you're at risk. So when thunder roars, go indoors. That is the best advice that we can give you. No one is more at risk than anyone else outdoors.
In conclusion, just tell us about this new website, Lightning website, that's been launched. What are you guys hoping to achieve with that, and what sort of communication process are you engaging on?
All right, so the website's name is www.lightningsa.org.za. And our vision behind this website is that it would be an information-rich resource for South Africans regarding lightning. So anyone can just log on at any time. There's, blogs. There'll be information, relevant research. There's, On the Pulse with Dr. B, where we talk about medical issues. There's lightning clips, very haunting and enigmatic clips. Slow motion of lightning. There's a gallery of 300 lightning pictures donated by Dr. Neil Duploy. It's a fascinating website, and we've never had something like this in our country before, so we're very proud of it.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. That's Dr. Ryan Blumenthal talking about, the recent lightning conference here in South Africa and the effect that lightning has, on the human body. I think that's pretty obvious, isn't it? Anyhow. More serious matters. Gunfire was heard in the northern parts of Paris overnight. This follows what is suspected to be a terrorist attack, that killed more than 130 people in the French capital over the past weekend. There's been mass hysteria descending on Paris with the latest reports. People are loath to come into the streets. As you can see, some of the streets are quite deserted right now in Paris. Here you see police operations, etc., that went on for the last few days. This, of course, after the attack at several hotspots in Paris. Comments continue to come in on our social media channels. This one from Winston. He talks about shooting breaks out during an anti-terror operation in northern Paris. This is according to the foreign media, he says. Now, we'll speak to a resident in Paris at the top of the hour at 10 o'clock to get you an update. Rifat talks about gunfire again at North Paris. Terrorists, why do you do this? He talks about the Paris attacks and the shootings there, of course. Rifat, that is exactly why they're doing it, to spread the kind of terror that you are feeling right now. The Piping Shrike talks about politicos, or left and right, saying how terrible the Paris attack are, then brushing the facts aside so they can push their agendas. That's only normal service. That resumes then. There you have a picture. Well, we had a picture there, but it's gone, of police police busy executing their duties on the streets of Paris. Let's now move to our Facebook page here at Newsroom. What is happening on our Newsroom Facebook page there? You'll see UN Secretary Ban Ki-moon has expressed his concern about reprisals or further discriminations directed against Muslims in the aftermath of the Paris terrorist attacks. We've already seen a whole host of mosques attacked in France at large. Then the Southern African Development Community, SADC's organ on politics, defense and security cooperation, Troika, is expected to receive the outcome of the Judge Mpati commission that investigated Lesotho's insecurity and the death of former army commander Maparankwe Mahao. And finally, the Basic Education Department has reacted with fury to the revelation of a leaked matric life science paper 2 exam in the Limpopo province. For more of that story, you're going to have to watch news at the top of the hour, or you can just simply go to our Facebook page, type in Newsroom in the search bar, SABC Newsroom, mind you, for that matter, will pop up in the stream. Like the page. If you like the page, we'll send you updates in your stream all day long. Time for us to take another break. You're watching Newsroom here on SABC News. See you then.
The road to greatness is not an easy one. It's rough, tough, and full of barriers. And there's only one way to master it. Never, ever stop. Dauntless. The all-new Audi Q7.
Welcome back. You with Newsroom now. Africa has a rich history with so many untold stories of not only tragedy but of love, family and community. Sindiwe Magona tells a hearty story of love and sadness with a witty sense of humor in her latest book. It's called Chasing the Tales of My Father's Cattle, a story set in a rural village in the heart of the Eastern Cape during the time of apartheid rule here in South Africa. Her novel tells the tales of those often rendered invisible, the poor, rural women and their families. But the characters live a remarkable life nonetheless. Now joining us in our Sea Point studio is the author of Chasing the Tales of My Father's Cattle, Sindiwe Magona. Very good morning to you, Sindiwe. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, and good morning to you too.
Lovely story, this. Tell us a little bit about this story. Did you recount a lot of your own childhood when you wrote this account?
No, absolutely none of me in this book.
Wonderful. Tell me how you then put it together.
You know, one carries a lot of stories in one's being, in one's body. Things you see, things you know, things you've heard, things that are just there. And I think the storyteller has the joyous business of gathering all these and putting them down either as they are or, you know, change here and change there. And that's what we do as storytellers.
Chasing the Tales of My Father's Cattle is a very interesting title and one that catches the eye. How did you come about this title?
It's not original. We have a saying in isiXhosa, silandela imichoba yenkomo zikabawo. We follow the tales of our father's cattle. So it's an adaptation of that. But the essence, the meaning behind that saying is the same, tradition.
Now the story is focused around your main character, Shumikazi.
Yes,
can you tell us a little bit about her and why you chose her to carry this really hearty African story of love and sadness?
Well, it's her story. It's also a family story. She is the 10th child of this couple, but she is the only one who survives. And unfortunately, at her birth, the mother dies. This woman who has given birth to 10 children never watches the children grow. Yes, they are born live, but only one actually even starts school. The others die in infancy. So this child is awaited with great joy, but unfortunately the mother dies. But her last words to her loving husband, Jojo, are, uzunceda ugcina usana lwam, uzunceda ugcina usana lam. Please look after my baby. And Jojo promises her this, and it becomes for him a sacred promise.
You talk about that powerful theme of the love that a father has for his daughter in this instance. Why is this so important for you, firstly, and then for the readers? Why is that such a crucial theme?
It is important because of what has happened to African fatherhood. It has almost disappeared. It's in a terrible, terrible state. And I do want to recall that once upon a time, we had good fathers. We had men who minded their business. And it is well to look back on that tradition and try and remind ourselves that we've been there and we could get back to that healthy state of affairs again. We have had, there are reasons why black fatherhood is in the wretchedness in which it is. But I do want to sound a note of hope.
Why would you say, it's a very controversial point and a very strong point and a much needed point that you're pointing out. Why are we in Africa in trouble with regards to fatherhood, do you think?
In South Africa, there are many reasons, and it's a known fact. If you see 10 African women and their mothers, 8 of them are probably single parents. We need to recall that we have a history of migrant labor system. And that means that African fathers were legally forced to neglect their fatherhood. They are being husbands. And we have generations of men, African men, who grew up without fathers. Where is the role modeling going to come from? Boys who never see their fathers being husbands to their wives.
In conclusion, what do you want South Africans to take out of this book of yours?
That human beings always do what benefits them. And it's wholesome to be a present father in your child's growth and growing. Nurture that child. It will pay dividends.
Thank you very much. Sindiwe Magona. She's written this wonderful book. It's called Tracing the Tales of My Father's Cattle. It's a must-read for South Africans. She talks about fatherhood and fatherhood being in crisis and in peril here in South Africa. It's something that we all should look at. Now, just take a look at our comment segment again. Yesterday, Stellenbosch students and workers went on another violent protest, burning some of the institution's property. Several students and workers were arrested during this specific protest. There's been lots said on social media. Let's just have a look what people are talking about with regards. Things my money will not allow for the Stelli's Rage page will be shut down. I cannot deal with those people's level of stupid anymore, says Ndumi. Then Don't Touch My Hair says, at Stelli's there was no threat of tear gas arrest during our attempt at a campus shutdown. Let me not be at the selection of police brutality. And then Vanilla Bear says, Stelli's is in the process of a potential shutdown. Please be safe if you're on campus and join the movement, talking about what's going on there. That's what's going on there. Now, for what I think is an absolutely cracking story. Recently, women pilots with Zimbabwe's national carrier achieved a first, an all-female flight deck on the Boeing 737. The flight has brought to the fore the incredible achievement. A small group of women who've broken through the glass ceiling in a country where less than 10% of girls study science subjects.
A small group of Zimbabwe pilots that keep raising the bar, despite facing pressure even from family not to become pilots.
They weren't too keen, so they sent me away for a gap year, and I came back and I was still adamant I wanted to be a pilot. And then I did an introductory flight in Zimbabwe, then I trained in South Africa at 43 Air School.
On Saturday, local history was made.
When I started flying, I actually started in the military. So at that time, the military was opening up to women to also come in and start taking up military training. So, you know, when something is new, it's met with a lot of resistance by some others. But you have to work twice as hard sometimes to prove yourself.
Saturday's flight, a fitting milestone to mark her 20 years as a pilot.
Oh, wow, that was exhilarating. You know, something that you'd never think would eventually happen, because it's been a long road for us to be captains. So being together in the same flight deck was just fun, totally fun.
For her co-pilot on this historic flight, the initial ceiling wasn't gender but her tiny stature. Captain Elizabeth Petros has seen many would-be female pilots fall by the wayside.
I have a family of my own, I've got children. It's been easier. You can juggle the two. So I think probably women have been afraid to get into it, thinking, will our career end or do we have to give it up for family? But I can tell you today that it's very possible to juggle the two.
Education experts say glass ceilings are raised at schools. Here many girls shun maths and science, believing it's only for boys. Women make up more than half of Zimbabwe's population, yet only 5% study science subjects at university.
I was probably the only one in class who would say I want to be a pilot. And in flight school, definitely there's very few ladies who are out there. And then you come here, I'm the only girl on the fleet that I'm on. And yeah, you get used to it.
Air Zimbabwe has been trying to encourage young children, especially girls, to consider a career in aviation through familiarization tours. It's proud of the achievement of women pilots. Former Captain Emilia Giovanni was the first female pilot to fly the 767 in Africa.
What passengers have been saying about these ladies flying, they've been accredited for the best cruising, the best feather landings, and magnificent takeoffs. Our passengers really love flying with those ladies, and we think women are really making a mark in aviation.
5 of Air Zimbabwe's 36 pilots are women, but there are 5 women who believe that the sky is no longer the limit, but their home. Shingai Nyoka, SABC News, Harare, Zimbabwe.
Fantastic story, and no jokes about women drivers should be made at this point in time. Rain, beautiful rain, is falling around the northern parts of southern Africa. It's long overdue. We need much more. Let's hope Philip Hawkins, who's here with a weather update, will give us more good news.
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, rain is indeed falling. It's going to be a bit of a wet one through South Africa's eastern regions here. You can see at the moment we're expecting cloud cover to develop, which might lead to a bit of rainfall over those eastern regions there. South Africa, the rest of it, at least, not expecting any rainfall whatsoever. But that rainfall is drawn in towards the far western parts of Zimbabwe, as well as affecting some parts of Botswana. Now, into tomorrow, it intensifies this afternoon and later this evening in the far northeastern parts of South Africa. Into the following day, though, this is tomorrow morning, we're going to see the rainfall residual in that area there. Not quite as heavy as this evening, but nothing we're not used to at this point. Warm temperatures during the day and a rainy evening. So let's take a look at those temperatures. Pretoria is at 29 degrees, temperatures ranging from about 18 all the way to 27 degrees along South Africa's coastlines there. As we can see, though, moving further north, temperatures rising steadily. Lusaka's at 32 degree maximum for today. And that, of course, is involved in this area, expecting a lot of rainfall. We're seeing that rainfall being drawn down from the central regions of Africa towards southern Africa as well. Low pressure systems, of course, dominating this entire latitude, mid-latitude band there. And into tomorrow, we're going to see those rainfalls continuing all the way throughout the area. Now, as we take a look through southern Africa's central regions towards the western areas there, what we're seeing is still quite a lot of rainfall occurring. Into your temperatures for today, what we're seeing is temperatures down into the lower 20s and the lower 20s and higher teens there. Nairobi's at 19 degrees, quite a bit of rainfall for the area. Now, moving further north, we're still seeing a little bit of rainfall over those far northern areas. around Tripoli and the surrounding areas. We're also seeing a little bit of rainfall over Baghdad as well as Tehran. But in general, a very, very dry one for today around this area. Moving into tonight, we're going to see that rainfall from Port Sudan beginning to move towards Sana'a. And that, of course, is southeast movement there. And that rainfall as well in the far northern parts beginning to recede. Now, taking a look at your temperatures, it is going to be a little bit of a chilly one in Al Jawf. As we can see, though, Tripoli peaking at about 21 degrees, expecting a lot of that cloud cover for today, but as we saw, only about a 30% chance of showers for the area. West Africa expecting a bit of a dry one as we look towards the coastlines of West Africa, at least for this morning. At this time, we're expecting isolated showers to begin to move towards that southern coastline of West Africa, towards Lagos. And as you can see, as we move through the night, we're going to expect that to migrate towards Lagos and then begin to recede once again. Rainfall intensifying in the far southwestern corner, and temperatures ranging all the way from about 37 degrees in the interior down to the mid to higher teens in some areas. Temperatures generally, though, in the interior much, much warmer, of course. Finally, we're going to take a look at what's going on in the southern regions there. What we're going to see into the following days is the intensification of rainfall from these western areas. So you're definitely going to want to stay tuned to see what's going on in your weather over the next few days. That's where I'm going to leave it for now. Stay tuned.
Yeah, thank you very much to Philip Hawkins for that update. The news looks good with regards to the rain. Of course, today we remember the greatest of all time, the man who's had the biggest impact on the modern game, the man who changed the way that rugby is played today. Big wingers, we ask you the question, how do you remember this man? How do you remember Jonah Lomu? What is your favorite memory of Jonah Lomu? Yes, it was always special to watch him do the haka here at Ellis Park or, well, all these countries. Yeah, we're playing the football from last night. Unfortunately, we've missed that. But we're talking about Jonah Lomu. How do you remember the great Jonah Lomu? Passed away overnight at his Auckland home. We'll be back at the top of the hour with another update. See you then.
It's 10:00 hours Central Africa time on this Wednesday, the 18th of November 2015. Jumbo Africa, and a very warm welcome to the second hour. This is Newsroom. I'm Elvis Preston. I'll be with you until 12 o'clock. You have to stay with us as we broadcast live from our Auckland Park studios, Johannesburg, South Africa, to the rest of the African continent. But first, let's take a look at all your news headlines. 3 suspects have died, including a woman who allegedly blown herself up during a police raid at a flat in the northern Paris suburb of Saint-Denis. Business in South Africa and the Kingdom of the Netherlands have signed 15 cooperation agreements in Johannesburg last night. And the political body of the International Criminal Court is convening in The Hague in the Netherlands with pressure building on its relationship with African countries. Those are all your headlines, but first let's find out from Kendall Makamate what's happening on the sports front. A very good morning to you.
Good morning, Elvis, and thank you very much, and a hearty good morning to our viewers as well. This is what we've got in store for you in the sports today. All Black great and rugby legend Jonah Lomu has died, aged 40, while waiting for a second kidney transplant. Bafana make it to the next round of the Russia 2018 World Cup qualifiers as they beat Angola 1-0 last night and 4-1 on aggregate. And the weather in Bangalore has a final word in the second test between India and South Africa as the match gets called off. Now, all this and more, I'll also be chatting to Ray de Vries, a man who's got intimate knowledge of Russian athletics, later on in the Sports Bulletin at about 10:20. Back to you, Elvis.
Thank you, Kendall. That's all coming up a little bit later, but right now let's take a look at your top story. French security forces say 3 suspects have died, including a woman who allegedly blown herself up during a police raid at a flat in the northern Paris suburb of Saint-Denis, in an operation that was linked to last Friday's terrorist attacks. One of the main suspects, Abdelhamid Abouat, the alleged mastermind, is said to be the focus of the operation. Explosions and gunfire have been heard. Truckloads of soldiers have been deployed to the area. French authorities say there is a police standoff between suspects and police in what is reportedly a raid at an apartment in the northern suburb of Saint-Denis in Paris. 3 people have been arrested and 2 police officers wounded. Earlier, security sources said that surveillance video showed a possible 9th assailant during the attacks. Investigators said that the Paris plot was hatched in Syria and nurtured in Belgium. The Islamic State group has claimed responsibility for the attacks. Police officials say the operation is directly related to the attacks and an ongoing manhunt for 2 more suspects believed to be involved. Now for an update on the situation in France and also today's meeting, very important meeting of the political body of the International Criminal Court, the ICC in The Hague. Let's now cross live to our correspondent, Jack Parrock, who's at The Hague in the Netherlands. Jack, a very good morning to you and welcome.
Good morning.
Now, first and foremostly, Jack, before we go to the very important story of the ICC, just give us a background and sort of an update in terms of the gunfire that have erupted in northern Paris suburbs early on Wednesday, and tell us what happened there and what is the mood like in Paris?
Indeed, so there's still not yet calm in Paris. I was there a couple of days ago and have come here for these meetings, and it's a very tense place, and you can only imagine how difficult it is to hear further gunshots and explosions as police raid apartments in the Saint-Denis area up in the north of the city of Paris as they try to find the suspects involved in the attacks that killed 129 people on Friday night. Now, it's believed that Abdelhamid Abouat, who's a 27-year-old Belgian-born man who is believed to have been partly one of the masterminds of the Paris attacks and is also linked to a number of other attempted and successful terrorist attacks on European soil over the last couple of years. It's believed that perhaps he was in the apartments that they were raiding, but there's still another man who is still on the loose, Salah Abdeslam, a 26-year-old Belgian man who is believed to have been directly involved and on the scenes of the attacks, in the Paris attacks. So the authorities are still looking for him. And the security forces are continuing to try and find the people responsible for these attacks across Europe.
Now, the big story, the political body of the International Criminal Court, that's the Assembly of State Parties, is convening in The Hague with pressure building on the court's relationship with African countries. It's going to be a tense standoff, it seems like it. Give us an update.
Indeed, it's going to be a very tense standoff. Now, the two things that everybody is going to be looking at is firstly the Kenya situation with Deputy President William Ruto still on trial here in The Hague for crimes against humanity. Kenya is pushing for some changes to how the court operates. They want evidence that was recanted in that case to not be used by the prosecution, and they want that to be a broad law, a broad regulation across the court. And we've actually heard this morning that Aden Duale, the majority leader of the National Congress in Kenya, has said that if Kenya doesn't get its way in these meetings, he will send the foreign minister straight to New York to try to withdraw Kenya from the International Criminal Court. Now, that is a possibility. They are able to do that, but it would take a year before they would leave, and also any cases that had started beforehand would still remain valid, and the prosecution would still prosecute. So it's going to be tense on the Kenyan front, certainly, but there's also a big element of the South African issue going on here as well. The court has asked South Africa to explain why it didn't hand over indicted Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir when he visited an AU summit in Johannesburg in June. The court says he should have handed them over, and it sparked a big debate in South Africa about whether South Africa should remain a member of the International Criminal Court as well.
When can we get the outcome of these decisions, or maybe the debates that's happening currently?
So we know, we are expecting at the moment that the South African Minister for International Relations will talk at around 3 p.m. today. That's Maite Nkwana Mashabane. So we'll hear what she has to say about it all. We're still waiting. What will happen when they first come in, they will agree the agenda. It's quite a difficult one for us who are trying to report on it to find out exactly when things are happening and what's going to go on. We obviously want to know when the Kenyans will speak and how long, and etc. But the general debates go on for a couple of days. But we're going to be finding out exactly what's going on within, hopefully, an hour or so.
Jack, thank you so much for that update, and you'll definitely keep us abreast of the happenings at the ICC. That's our correspondent, Jack Parrock, who was at The Hague. Meanwhile, earlier today, 2 Air France flights en route to Paris from the United States were diverted on Tuesday following anonymous bomb threats. The airline and the Federal Aviation Administration says that passengers and crew were safely removed. An FAA spokesperson says an Airbus A380 that departed from Los Angeles landed in Salt Lake City, where the passengers and crew were taken off the plane and escorted into the terminal. A separate flight that left Dulles International Airport outside Washington, D.C. was diverted to Halifax International Airport, where passengers and crew had disembarked. In a brief statement, Air France said that both flights had been the subject of anonymous threats received after their respective takeoffs. Security officials have been on high alert since last week's deadly attacks in Paris. The United Nations Secretary-General has expressed concern about reprisals or further discrimination directed against Muslims in the aftermath of the Paris terrorist attacks. Addressing a Security Council meeting, Ban Ki-moon has warned that such action will alienate Muslims more.
He again offered his condolences to the people of France and reiterated the fairly broadly held view that no action targeting innocents could justify the acts of terror, whether in Paris, Beirut, Baghdad or elsewhere.
In the aftermath of other terrorist bombings in recent days in Beirut and Baghdad, and the apparent bombing of a Russian airplane, we see the continuing peril of terrorism. and indeed the mounting threat from Daesh. No grievance or cause can justify such acts.
He urged the world to come together to defeat terrorism within the confines of the rule of law and use this platform to again link terrorist acts to a complex number of issues.
Today's conflicts and violent extremism are often rooted in a mix of exclusion, inequality, mismanagement of natural resources, corruption, oppression, governance failures, and frustration and alienation that accompany a lack of jobs and opportunities. Yet our responses have not caught up to these realities.
Integrated approach that focused more on prevention.
Sherwin Briceby's SABC News, New York.
An explosion in the Nigerian city of Yola has claimed the lives of more than 30 people and left dozens injured. The blast appears to have struck a busy market area where traders were closing up for the day. The explosion occurred at a fruit and vegetable market beside the main road in the Jameta area of Adamawa State. There was no immediate claim of responsibility, but the blast bore the hallmarks of the militant group Boko Haram, which has killed thousands over the last 6 years in its bid to create a caliphate adhering to strict Sharia law in the northeast. Yola has twice been hit by deadly bomb attacks this year. The historic relationship between South Africa and the Netherlands was strengthened further with the signing of trading contracts in Johannesburg last night. The Dutch Prime Minister, Mark Rutte, told the business in fact, we'll see if we can get that story back in terms of the story. He told the business last night that the country wished to increase the current €3.3 billion investment into this country. Now, earlier, President Jacob Zuma called on world leaders to up the ante in the global war on terrorism. He was speaking during the state visit of Dutch Prime Minister Rutte in Pretoria. Rutte's visit to South Africa has been cut short following the terror attacks in Paris, France. President Zuma says Africa is already doing its bit to tackle terror groups on the continent.
A 19-gun salute kicks off an official visit. But tragic developments elsewhere in Europe hijacked what was to be economy-focused bilaterals.
Well, predictably, the recent terror attacks in Paris dominated the agenda here at the Union buildings. Both countries have now vowed to pool their resources and share expertise and intelligence in the war on terror in Africa and around the globe.
There is a general agreement that everybody else, of course, we could best come together in an organized fashion under the UN system. And that's what we were saying. But we are ready, all of us, to participate in fighting terrorism. As I indicated, and I did indicate in our discussions with the Prime Minister, that even in Africa, there's a big challenge. In North Africa, for an example, the extreme kind of terrorist attacks, undermining of the security, and the AU is working on that.
I believe the attacks in Paris highlight the importance of countries working together in the fight against terrorism. And the Netherlands and South Africa are doing precisely, exactly that, together with many other nations.
But President Zuma warns that continuous foreign interference in independent states in the Middle East is one of the root causes behind the formation of global terror organizations.
It is our strong belief that the interference by outside parties in some countries and the pursuit of the regime change doctrine has perpetuated a cycle of conflict and instability in many parts of North Africa and the Middle East. The preference for military action instead of political solutions becomes a breeding ground for violent extremism and terrorism.
Trade between the Netherlands and South Africa has consistently grown since 2010, from 27 billion to 48 billion rand in 2014. Tumalo Mohlaudi, SABC News, Pretoria.
Now, that historic relationship between South Africa and the Netherlands was strengthened further with the signing of trading contracts in Johannesburg last night. The Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte told the business community about his country's wish to increase the current €3.3 billion investment into this country.
Following the day of political engagements with President Jacob Zuma in Pretoria, it was time to tie a business deal. 15 contracts signed, including the Square Kilometre Array Telescope, also known as SKA. Amsterdam, a strong ally of Pretoria, dating back to the struggle era when Netherlands backed the ANC.
I believe there's room for more. I had very productive meetings with President Zuma and members of his cabinet, and we decided to step up our cooperation even more. At the meeting, we signed bilateral agreements on a range of topics.
The Minister of Small Business, Lindiwe Zulu, encouraged by the Dutch investments as a two-way traffic that will see the country's investors pursuing opportunities in Amsterdam.
I just would like to take a step back because there must be a context of the relationship between South Africa and the Netherlands. The Netherlands supported us in our liberation struggle throughout, and we are happy that they are here today to assist us in the next step, which is now we are a democratic South Africa, and therefore we still need partners who also want to be equal partners with South Africa.
Rutte reminded South Africa that the countries share a common history that can also be turned into a common future.
Let's go back to Paris. French security forces say 3 suspects have died, including a woman who allegedly blown herself up during a police raid at a flat in the northern Paris suburb of Saint-Denis. Now, for another update on the situation in Paris, we are now joined on the line by Sikadar Malik, a resident of Paris. A very good morning to you, Sidika.
Hello, good morning, sir. How are you?
Very well, thank you. What can you tell us about this morning's raid in northern Paris suburb of Saint-Denis?
Yes, I'm going to work right now, but yes, I heard about the news this morning, and they are about to are doing a raid. But I am not very much in contact because when I reach office, I'll take a look. But yeah, it's like 5 days now. 5 days have passed, but we have seen here now the position of the police and the military. They are moving around every 5 minutes. In every corner of the street and every corner of the road and every area, trying to search the person who is missing, apparently.
What is the
so
mood?
Now
what is the mood like, Sikadar, in Paris right now where you are, and especially the new security measures that's in the country? Are you feeling comfortable and safe?
Yes, actually comfortable, you can say that, but by watching the police every corner of the street, yeah, but you know, you can be comfortable, but you are not 100% safe. You not feel 100% safe. Yesterday, day before yesterday, in a restaurant, there was a bulb diffused, and everyone just ran out of they thought that it was like again a bomb or something like that. So the people here they are scared, So they are I think they are still in the shock of what happened 5 days ago.
Are they afraid perhaps
I think it takes time.
Are they afraid perhaps that something like this can happen again?
Well, our president has said that no, he has made sure that something like that will never happen again. But we have seen the other news channels and everything, and this is that we have to be we have to be how can I say that? We have to be sure of our own security first, So yeah, but like that. I'm at the Champs-Élysées right now, the main busiest and the main road of Paris. If you know it, right? So what we can see is there are not a lot of people like everyday routine, So now we can clearly see that because of the attack in Paris, we have the less people on the road and less people we can see in the...
Yes. Okay. Sikadar, unfortunately, that's where we got to leave it. We run out of time. Thank you so much for your time. That was Sikadar Malik. He is a resident there in Paris, giving us his take and his feel about the situation in Paris. That's where we got to leave it right now. Let's take a break. And Kendall Makamate will be back with your sports news.
At Philips, we wake up every morning and ask, how can innovation make a difference to you? How can thousands of LEDs bring the pyramids to life and light up hearts? How can an air fryer make delicious traditional meals with up to 80% less fat? How can portable ultrasound be part of a program to help lower infant mortality in Uganda? Because the only innovation that really matters is innovation that matters to you. Innovation and you. Philips.
Get all the latest news from the SABC's online news services on our website. Breaking news and in-depth coverage of everything from business, sports to politics and lifestyle. Catch the top news clips and watch live streaming of major news events on the SABC News YouTube channel whenever. Stay connected on the SABC News Facebook page and have your say on news that matters to you. And for the latest headlines and live updates from our reporters, follow us on Twitter. SABC Digital News, anytime, anywhere.
Good morning, welcome back. My name is Kendall Makamate and I've got your sports on Newsroom. Our top story for this morning, as you might have heard already, is that Jonah Lomu has passed away. Now, New Zealand Prime Minister John Key says the thoughts of the entire country are with the family of rugby legend Jonah Lomu. He passed away at the age of 40. According to New Zealand Rugby CEO Steve Tew, they should probably not have the commercial clout it currently enjoys in the rugby world had Jonah Lomu not pulled on the famous All Blacks jersey. Tributes have been pouring in for the wing, who died just last night. Lomu, who scored 43 tries in 73 matches for New Zealand between 1994 and 2002, had been diagnosed with a rare and serious kidney condition. Despite his health problems, he'd been working in the UK during the recent Rugby World Cup.
Jonah Lomu, seen here in London in September, was waiting for a second kidney transplant when he died on Wednesday at the age of 40. During his career, he played 63 tests on the wing for New Zealand, scoring 37 international tries. Lomu was plucked from obscurity as an 18-year-old by All Blacks coach Laurie Mains. He found the transition from loose forward position he played at school to the wing difficult. In the end, his pace and power changed the wing position, with the traditional lightweight flyer all but vanishing from the test game. He had a kidney transplant in 2004 because of nephritic syndrome. The ravages of the disease began to affect his performance in 1998, although he still made the World Cup squad the following year. He was undergoing dialysis and waiting for a second transplant when he died on the 18th of November.
All right, now the biggest scandal to hit the world of sports. The IAAF doping saga has already claimed casualties. That's the Russian Athletics Federation, which has been banned from all things athletics by the IAAF. Joining me is someone you've seen on your screens before. Besides his other business interests, he also manages the South African running legend Zola Bud and was instrumental in bringing Russian athletes to South Africa to compete in the Comrades Marathons. And that is why he's here to talk to us. Good morning, Ray, and welcome back to Newsroom.
Good morning, thank you.
Ray, the biggest thing that we want to talk to you about is not your other business. It's literally about the doping scandal that's hit the world. What do you make of this scandal that's enveloped the world of athletics and, in particular, Russia?
I think two things that strike me over here. How can you ban an entire country or threaten to ban an entire country? What about Kenya? Next week it's going to explode about Kenya, about Turkey, about Ethiopia. That's the next lot that's coming out by Dick Pound, who's the WADA, works with WADA. And sadly, what it does, it paints everybody with the same brush. So any guy that runs a great time now, any girl who runs a great time now, they suddenly must be doping because they did so well. What about the officials? Who's doing the officials? You know, I liken it to I park in loading zones. How bad is a loading zone? How bad is doping? If I'm an advertising executive or an accountant and I take a snort of Coke to get myself into the mood for the business meeting, who's cheating, who's not cheating? It is so murky, and it is run by the officials that are right at the very top.
You bring up an interesting thing when you say who's looking at the officials and who's looking at the doping controls themselves. Let's look at the Russian athletes. You've had very close contact with them over the years, right? And what have you got to say about this? How many of them would you say that actually would have been painted with a right brush and some with the wrong brush?
I think it doesn't differentiate between Russia and the rest of the world. I would say a large percentage of people dope. I know of a few. If one takes the Eddie Hallebuck and the Shvetsov incidents and Charles Mateus and who was in that training camp, and the training camps are always at altitude, but they're also very difficult to find at altitude, and there's a reason for that. I think that the only way to clean this up is to have a passport of sorts. If you have a Comrades Marathon, that you have to have 6 stamps on your passport, as it were, and you make it known exactly where you are, and you get tested before you come in, if you want to run for the money. It's the only way you're going to do this. You know, this terrible thing that happened in Russia now was a sum of money was paid. A New York agent, Baranov, who's actually a Russian, is New York City based, one of his athletes who was on the way to the Olympics was found guilty of doping.
You're talking about Lilia Shobukova?
Yes, I am. And 450,000 euros was paid for that to shut up. When she was found guilty and wasn't allowed to go, was disqualified anyway, she asked for her money back and only got 300,000 euros back. So 150,000 euros was short, and that was enough money for people to talk. And that's why Baranov and a few other people are actually blaming.
I think let's bring our viewers a little bit into the picture here, because Baranov is the one whistleblower that came out in 2014 after the first allegations came out, I think 6 months before that, right? And he came out and wrote to the IAAF, the Ethics Committee, to complain about the widespread doping in Russia specifically, but also in other countries. And because he was 150,000 euros short, he reckoned he's just going to blow the lid on everything.
Yeah, he blew the lid on everything, but I also think that there's a murky other world over here. You know, why Syria, why geopolitical, why Ukraine, why Russia, why this, why that? And I think that just spills over into sport. Sport is at the heart of a country. It's the conscience of a nation, actually. And when you start doing that, I mean, South Africa, I believe, and it's only I believe, it fell because of sport. I believe that the miracle of 1994 happened in 1995. When Madiba wore the Springbok jersey. So sport is right at the center of our being. It's not an intellectual thing, it's deep inside of our hearts. When we watch a Comrades and we watch the incredible thing, you watch a Fordyce win 9 times, and you watch that, you get involved in it. You're almost part of the game itself. And to see all this, it's horrible. And the athletes, once again, are the people that fall. They're the meat in the sandwich. What about the officials that have been found guilty in this country of stealing? We've got thieves running some of our sports. One is the Athletic South Africa. Why isn't he in jail?
Well, that's another story. That's a story for another day. And I do think it's actually serious enough to actually discuss and talk about. Matter at hand, though, right now, is specifically what's been found out and what's actually been spoken about with regards to the rest of the world. The extent of doping in athletics or long-distance running. You've been very heavily involved with the Comrades Marathon, at least bringing athletes through, specifically Russian athletes. There was the case of the Russian twins that did very well in the Comrades. What do you make of their performances? Were they doping? Were they not doping? Was their case handled properly or not?
I think it would be dishonorable of me to say that they must have been taking drugs or they weren't taking drugs. Who the hell am I? What I would say is let's retest all of the samples of everybody, including South Africans. Let's get to the bottom of that.
Retest up to when? This last year?
As far as you've got records for. Blood was only allowed in the last few years, but they've still got those bloods. Let's check those bloods. Let's open everything up. Let's stop the cover up. Let's smash the cover up. And let's take the people to task. You know, when you start changing rules, as in the last Comrades, The president of KwaZulu-Natal changed the whole thing on Zola Bud. He went against the own rules. Where did those rules start and end? So doping is just an extenuation of that. But maybe an alternative is, hey, let anybody dope. Then everybody's equal.
Because that was what I was going to ask you. Is clean sport possible? Because, like you say, Kenya is probably about to explode next week. And most recently, we heard that there's a 4-year ban hanging over their heads in case they do not clean up their sports. What do you make of what's going out in East Africa there?
Well, Raymond Tanui in 2009 was found, caught, red-handed. And it was reported to the officials, the top echelon of the IAAF, and nothing ever happened with it. That's going to come out next week. That's about to explode as well. So I think it's a good thing. Man, shake the tree, let everything fall out, but let's not discriminate against a Russia or against the US. The US has an amazingly low percentage of dopers. Ben Johnson was a Canadian, wasn't a US citizen at that. Well, he never was. So I think let's a gaping hole. Let's widen the hole. Let the rats jump off the sinking ship. And let's expose it so that you and me watching television and watching our heroes and watching our kids watching for heroes know that they're clean and it's a good example to follow, not a bad one.
Ray, I think you and I need to talk a lot more. There's a lot more to talk about, especially when the Kenya story comes out in full, when we hear what's going on in there from Dick Pound's further investigations. I want to thank you very much for having come through. We know that you flew through from Durban to make sure that you could make it for this interview. We really appreciate it.
It's an absolute pleasure, and I think we need to tell the story more.
No, fantastic. That was Ray de Vries, a man who's very intimately linked to a lot of athletes all over the world over the last couple of years and knows a lot. So we'll be talking to him a lot more. That's where we leave it with the sport. Up next, we'll take a quick break. We've got more news after that. Stay tuned.
Health Talk looks into the increase of suicide and symptoms leading to suicide.
The death wish grows when you go into depression after a lot of stress.
And often when we talk about suicide, we don't talk about a person wanting to stop living, but rather wanting to stop living in pain.
After losing everything in life that lead you to no options but suicide.
I had that spirit of fear in me to say, don't even face tomorrow.
After being overwhelmed with stress and trauma, it becomes difficult to have self-control.
People learning tools and skills that will practically enable them to meet these challenges.
In trying times, never be alone. Reach out for help to a better solution.
Support should be done by a counsellor or psychologist where you're able to speak about how you're feeling in a safe, accepting, non-judgmental space.
For all your health tips, join Dr. Silo Mutawuni every Saturday from 9 till 10.
Welcome back. We continue with Newsroom. Time for us now to take a look at the news affecting the African continent. An explosion in the Nigerian city of Yola has claimed the lives of more than 30 people and left more than 80 people injured. The blast struck a busy market area as traders began closing up for the day. No one has yet claimed responsibility for the attack, but officials say it bears the signs of Boko Haram. The city of Yola has twice been hit by deadly bomb attacks this year. The Rwandan Senate yesterday approved the draft resolution to allow President Paul Kagame to seek a third term. The Senate believes that the referendum will not be faced with opposition. Kagame has been in power since 2000 and has been praised for rebuilding the nation after the 1994 genocide. Meanwhile, rights groups say that the government severely restricts freedom of expression there. Both military opposition in the South Sudan conflict have accused each other of violating a peace deal signed in August. Rebels yesterday said that government soldiers launched attacks against their troops in the Unity State. That was last week, and that left at least 22 people dead. The defense minister said that the retaliation attacks violated the peace deal signed between President Salva Kiir and rebel leader and former government deputy Riek Machar. Then Senegal has banned females from wearing burqas, the most conservative Islamic clothing item worn by women. The Interior Minister made this announcement yesterday. This comes after the growing risk of the Islamic extremist Boko Haram. 4 imams accused of links to the Nigeria-based insurgent group have been arrested. Now, just as the 10th G20 summit got underway in Turkey this week, the spotlight was still on the attack on Paris by the Islamic State that has left more than 120 people dead. Climate change was set to be the focus for this year's summit ahead of the COP21 summit in Paris, which of course will take place later this month. But terrorism now has overshadowed several economic outlooks and discussions. Joining us from our studio in Durban is economic and political analyst Israel Mkhize. Very good morning to you, Israel. Thank you for joining us.
Morning, Eben. Morning to the viewers.
Now, Israel, the G20 summit got underway, somewhat overshadowed by what was the Paris attack, which has become known so far. Just tell us quickly, what do you see as the key points to have come out of G20 so far?
Well, what has come out of G20, obviously, the events in Paris overshadowed the whole conference. However, what I see is the quest for justice. Now, the quest for justice can be sought from 2 main angles. One, it can be sought at an international relations arena through what we call systems, or it can be sought through what we call global anarchy. Now, I'm taking this to reflect that as I see the G20, it is a continuation of how the world was structured just after World War II. Where Europe would have claimed to have conquered, particularly 1989 at the fall of the Berlin Wall, have conquered the narrative, global narrative in terms of economy and political geo-thinking, that they are dominating the world. Hence, in the G20, you seeing most countries from the so-called developing countries relying on the messages and the pronouncements and the promises that are going to come from the G20 leaders and of those developed countries. But there's been less on the question of aid, because it has been discovered that even the aid that we think or have been thinking that the developing countries take from or get from G8, that it's actually being acquired from the illicit financial outflows from those developing regions. So what I see is kind of a mixed message, because there's also a deep anxiety also at the realignment of these developed countries. Previously, Putin, actually, before the Paris attack, Putin has always been seen as someone who's a villain, or someone who's a naughty child, not someone who's wielding power recklessly. But today it's amazing how you look at England and how you look at America and France itself wanting to align with Putin, because they've discovered that actually we've got a common enemy. It's just that the approaches which we may have used may not have been the same, but we've got the same enemy.
Now, terror is very much in focus. Let's talk about terror in Africa and how the east-west shift is happening right now. We've, of course, seen a Russian airline downed in Egypt recently, then followed by Paris, of course. How do you see the Russian airline Paris? How do you see it shift relations between East and West, if any?
Well, Eben, the interesting part is that at the wake of the World War II, when Europe was fighting amongst itself and its allies, you realize that the world was framed into 3 legs or 3 quarters: the so-called developed countries, first world and second world, and communist-oriented countries, which would group your China and Russia. Then there were so-called non-aligned countries, which would be Africa and South Asia. But nobody spoke about the Arab nations' aspirations and position. In so doing, with the rise of the Bretton Woods institutions, particularly the United Nations, you see that little was considered from the aspirations of countries in South Asia. So you find that because of state capitalism and how these Western countries have been entrenched into resources, natural resources of these Arab League nations, now you find that there's been resistance. You look at the attack at America in 2011, which was very sad, but the attack was on the economic center and also at Pentagon, which is the security sector, which was sort of other people have interpreted as some form of resistance of the dominating narrative. So what's going on now is that in Africa, you've got countries that are aligned to the resistance which is being put up by the pro-Islamic sort of revolutionaries, if you were to call them. And you look at those who are mindful of the systems that have been put in place, such as the Honorable Her Excellency Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, the chairperson of the AU Commission, coming out and condemning the attacks. But you can see that there is the whole notion of protectionism of the systems which have already been put in place, which should be dealing with the questions of global security and insecurity. And very important theories are coming now to be challenged, because one of the security theory in international relations is that the more states are armed, the more there is security in the world, because no one will want to attack the next person whom they know is extremely armed. But such things are being brought into questions because there is now informal power, or what we call elusive power. Because when you deal with, for instance, terrorism, you're not dealing with state-organized kind of military power like you'd have dealt with U.S. forces, which is organized. But terrorism can actually disperse itself across and ensure that they are widely spread and they strike when you least expect. So we see now that the European zone is actually overlooking its ideological posture of the Second World War and Cold War, where Russia was actually ostracized. But you're seeing all of them coming together because you do not know where these well-coordinated but underground forces can actually strike, and how these actually affect the economy brings to me the biggest interest, because in Tunisia recently we had a gunman going wild on people there at the beach, and now how that affected the economy right there in Tunisia. You've got Egypt now. As I've been trying to follow the story to check whether the plane was an accident or was it a bomb, now Russia comes out, it says it's a bomb, they offer $50 million. So now the question of tourism and doing business in a country which has been just recently declared to be climbing on number 2 on African economy, all of those things are coming into play.
Israel, thank you very much for joining us. That's our resident political and economic analyst expert on Africa, Israel Mkhize, coming to us live from Durban this morning. Of course, at the weekend, the world turned its focus to the Paris attack that left more than 120 people dead and around 100 injured. And just 2 weeks ago, experts revealed that a Russian airliner that crashed over the Sinai in Egypt, killing all 224 passengers on board, was caused by a bomb that Islamic extremists claimed responsibility for. But these are only 2 of the incidents that have been highlighted this year alone. In Africa, several countries are waging a war against terror. We've seen bomb blasts in Beirut and elsewhere in the world. Now, joining us today is Afro-Middle East Center researcher Omar Shokat. He's here to give us his views. You're an expert on ISIS, on ISIS, Omar. Just give us your views with what happened in Paris last week.
First of all, thank you for having me, and I wish I can be given the same kind of time that your previous guest had, because then we can really discuss ISIS. But look, I think when we're discussing ISIS in relation to Paris, first of all, we should remember this is not something new that ISIS has done. For the last year, since the bombing campaign in Iraq has started against ISIS, they've been carrying out these threats for a very long time against Western nations, against Arab countries, and they have already carried it out in Tunisia, in Saudi Arabia, in Kuwait, in Yemen, now in Paris. So the world is now turning its attention towards Paris because it's a Western country. So there is a lot of discussion about it. But I think the one last thing to maybe keep in mind is that ISIS actually might be at its weakest point. That's why it's trying to engage in these spectacular attacks, in a way mirroring what Al-Qaeda was doing with 9/11, at which point it was at its weakest point. and it did whatever it did in order to elicit a reaction.
Yeah.
So maybe ISIS is doing that. I'm not sure, but it could be, because I think territory is being taken from them, but not at such a rate that we would like.
Do you expect a united global response now in Syria?
No, I do not. I don't think the Syrian problem will be resolved until all the countries can see eye to eye on what needs to be done. And given the divisions between Iran and Saudi Arabia, I don't think they will come to that agreement. And effectively, when it comes to the resolution of the Syrian conflict, we're talking about Iran and Syria. Iran and Saudi Arabia, not USA, France, Russia. These are, world powers, but they're backed aside. Those sides need to come together.
You talk about a weakening of ISIS that you believe is happening. Just tell us about the strength and the strongholds that you believe is at the heart of this organization.
I think to understand what's going on right now with ISIS, we need to keep in mind what happened and how they built their organization in the first incarnation of the group back in 2006. Even at that time, ISIS itself, the ideological recruits of ISIS were not that many. It was called it had a different name. So I'm just going with ISIS right now. And what they were actually able to tap into was a lot of dissatisfaction with the central government, with the situation in occupied Iraq at that time. And something similar is happening right now. The large number of Sunni tribes that have allied with them, they could potentially be turned away from them, because I don't think they are ideological allies. But who are they going to turn to? The Iraqi government has alienated them. The Syrian government has alienated them. So that's the bigger issue over here. And this weakening, I also want to be clear. I'm not suggesting that territory, like I said earlier on, is being taken away at a very fast pace. But because they're not expanding and they need to keep their brand and logo alive, they might be asking their regional affiliates to engage in more action, so that that can generate the news around the world.
So you believe that because of this, we'll start to see more isolated attacks on in this case, European member countries?
Whether we'll see them or not, I don't know. Whether ISIS will try to attempt that, yes, I think so. But again, when we say ISIS will try to do so, we should keep in mind that there are lots of groups that have had an independent reality of ISIS before and after their affiliation with ISIS. Just like in the Russian plane case that we were discussing earlier on. That group has been around for a long time, before ISIS even came around. When ISIS came around, got all the global media attention, then they offered their allegiance to ISIS, and now they're known as an ISIS branch. So both similarly, things with Boko Haram and a section of the Shabab, these are not necessarily ISIS groups. They have local problems, but because they get more attention, they'll affiliate themselves with ISIS.
Now, there's a lot of conspiracy theories doing the rounds. It's a little bit muddled about who supports who and who gets weapons from who in the Middle East and so forth. There's even talk about ISIS being, in some instances, supported by Western nations. What do you make of that kind of talk? Even that Israel could be mimicking some of these attacks. Well, what do you make of this kind of talk?
Okay, so I don't think, first of all, we have enough evidence to say that at the highest policy-making level, at that level, the policymakers have decided to supply ISIS with weaponry and trying to manipulate ISIS for their own good. Things like that have happened in the past. I don't think we have evidence to say that about ISIS. For example, the Mujahideen in Afghanistan, they were directly supported at the highest policy-making levels in Pakistan, in the US, versus the Russians. Something like that could be happening. I don't have evidence for it. But on the other hand, when people use the information that is available, passing of weapons, American-made weaponry or Chinese-made weaponry, and people will splash those pictures on social media and then say, look, Americans or Israelis are behind this. This is a war zone. Weapons will enter in from any and every place. The Western nations and Israelis, along with Jordanians, Saudis, Qataris, a bunch of countries, they've supplied rebels with weapons. Those rebels in the battlefield switch sides. Some get killed. Weapons get smuggled. Weapons get traded on black markets. So I don't read too much into just the transference of weapons.
Yeah. Well, Omar, as you said yourself, we could carry on with this interview for much longer, but we run out of time. Thank you very much for joining us and giving us a unique, interesting perspective on ISIS and how the organization works and interesting take is that they could be at their weakest point right now. Omar Shakat, thanks for joining us. He's a researcher for the Afro-Middle East Center here in Johannesburg in South Africa. Let's take a look now at what's on the front pages from around the continent here in South Africa. We start in Swaziland. The Swaziland Observer reports that government has paid the National Maize Corporation 35 million emalangeni to supply 6,000 metric tons of maize and beans to be distributed in drought-stricken areas. That process gets underway today. Then in Namibia, the Namibian says a Chinese-funded state hospital at Umutia continues to attract controversy, the latest being President Archer Geingob, who expressed dissatisfaction at the lack of the usage of medical equipment there. Then finally in Zimbabwe, the Chronicle reports that President Robert Mugabe has given the nod to a number of investment deals with Belarus that will see the Eastern European country bring machinery to various sectors there. That is in Zimbabwe. Now we continue with our focus. France is known as the city of love and romance, but has, of course, been in the spotlight this week for quite the opposite. The country is one of the most popular destinations to travel to in the world, and despite the Paris attacks, many holidaymakers have already planned to travel to this remarkable city this festive season. From the boulevards of Paris to the fashionable seaside sorts of the Côte d'Azur, even Monaco, France, offers some of the most beautiful scenery in the world. If you're worried about your travels to Paris, there are fairy tale castles, soaring cathedrals, and picture-perfect villages right across the country. But to tell us a little bit more, we are joined by the Managing Director of the Dash Travel Agency, Zenobia Moorman. A very good morning to you, Zenobia. Thanks you for joining us again.
Hi there.
This week we're looking at the city of love, of course, because it's in the news for that matter. Many people are planning to go there already, paid for holidays. What is your advice to those who are now concerned about their holiday because of what we've seen in Paris?
I don't think people should cancel their holiday plans. I think the safety and security in Paris at the moment is a lot better than it would ever have been. The French people are so resilient. This time they're coming out, they are totally positive, they are not lying down. So I honestly don't think that anybody should cancel. The safety and security at the airports, any entry point, the borders have been jacked up so much. I think it is really safe to go at the moment.
The traveling individual though, what sort of safety precautions or ideas should you be taking? Should you be thinking about specific flights? Should you be thinking about staying in a specific part of Paris and so forth?
No, I don't think so. I honestly don't think. I think the worst has happened, and to change that now or to play into the hand of those people is just not worth it. I honestly believe things will go back to normal. All the museums are open again. The public places are open again. So, obviously don't go to little places, maybe stay with crowds. But like if you go to the Eiffel Tower, for example, there's so much security under a normal circumstance. And if you look at even at the start of France, you can't get in. It is they're so serious with security.
Now we're seeing, this is pictures, of course, there we just missed it, but we see pictures of elsewhere in France, of course. And France is not just about Paris. It's a beautiful city with so much more, specifically the south. I think Nice is one of those cities that's absolutely beautiful, and the run from Nice all the way to Monaco is fantastic. So people should think about getting around France a little bit if they've paid for their holidays already.
Yeah, the French Riviera is there, so you can go there. If you have a visa for the UK, you can go to London if you want to go for a weekend. But you can do Normandy, you can do all the southern areas where most of the artists have been inspired to paint, and it is beautiful. And the wine regions, and December's a bit cold for the beaches, but the Alps, you can go ski in France. So there's so much more to France than just Paris.
You talked about the visa there. What's going to happen with the Schengen visa now in the light of what's going on in Europe? What do you think?
I spoke to the French embassy yesterday, and they are not changing any of the requirements. They are very strict for South Africans as it is. They do biometrics, they do fingerprints, so there won't be any discrimination against South Africans. The process will carry on as normal. The only difference is at the airport you are going to have 3 hours time delay to get through customs, whereas before it might have only been an hour.
Now, people are going to Paris in the festive season, but it's winter there. It's not really the best time to travel there, is it?
No, not really, but it's beautiful. Just don't go out at night. It's a bit chilly.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful and romantic. These wonderful old buildings, architecture, absolutely amazing. Zenobia, thank you for joining us and bringing us good news. If you've booked holidays to France, don't change a thing. Just carry on as per normal. Zenobia says it's going to be all okay. So, Zenobia, if anything happens to a South African over the holidays, we're going to pull this tape and we're going to hold you accountable for that. That is Zenobia Moolman. She's the managing director of the Dash Travel Agency here in Johannesburg, telling us that the City of Love is still good to go for the festive season. Thank you very much. Time for us now to pay the bills. You're watching Newsroom here on SABC News.
We kick off this week's show by seeing how Kenyans are paying tribute to the victims, as well as not only how they've coped, but how they returned stronger after the attacks.
Last year, images of the 4-day Westgate Mall attack saturated front pages.
In the Democratic Republic of Congo, artists have assembled to celebrate the peace this war-torn country has not had in a long time.
No conflict that can't be solved without a conversation.
The Journal, every Saturday at 1:30 on SABC News.
I'm Peter Miller.
And I'm Rebecca Chetty Miller, SAB Miller, and House of Bush in Bev. It's something that I need to learn to say more often.
Will together produce around a third of the world's beer.
It is a mouthful.
Have you ever considered skin bleaching?
Nigeria tops the list of African countries with 77% of its women bleaching their skin.
Now I can see that it is not good, because it affects my face and some of my body parts.
Thousands of Arab Israelis and Palestinians participated in a big rally.
Flight MH17 was shot down by a Russian-made missile.
How those chips may fall is a prediction best left to the currency of time.
That's Primetime News, Africa Journal, and your world on SABC News.
Your destiny is not determined by the township you come from.
The one place we will find movers and shakers is in the township. It's just that they're diamonds in the rough and some of them don't even know it.
Being young with no experience in business is a challenge that Bulelani took upon himself.
I was motivated by the prayer. I was motivated by the love.
To be a novice in business was tough, but experience made him a businessman of note.
It took me 7 years to make my first million. I've got all the scars to prove that I started with nothing.
A journey well traveled.
For me, that is the one major thing. The ability to touch other people's lives. Nothing goes beyond that.
Join your host Puleng Mulebati on Bopilong every Saturday at 5:30 p.m.
The judge slammed corruption in both the private and public sector. Referring to irregular and wasteful government expenditure, he said it could no longer go on.
The high-profile corruption scandal has dominated Spain's headlines in recent weeks. The scandal touching a nerve as Spain emerges from its downturn after a slew of corruption cases involving politicians and the king's sister.
Tourism is a vital part of the economy. It contributes about 5% to the country's GDP and is a significant contributor to various industries such as food production, retail and transport.
For all your business news, stay tuned to your favorite channel, SABC News, at 1 Monday to Friday.
It's 1100 hours Central African time on this Wednesday, the 18th of November 2015. Jumbo Africa, and a very warm welcome to the final hour. This is Newsroom. I'm Elvis Preslin. I'll be with you until 12 o'clock. You have to stay with us as we broadcast live from our Auckland Park studios, Johannesburg, South Africa, to the rest of the African continent. First, let's take a look at all your headlines. Three suspects have died, including a woman who allegedly blown herself up during a police raid at a flat in the northern Paris suburb of Saint-Denis. Business in South Africa and the Kingdom of the Netherlands have signed 15 cooperation agreements in Johannesburg last night. And the political body of the International Criminal Court is convening in The Hague in the Netherlands, with pressure building on its relationship with African countries. Now, those are all your headlines. Kendall Makamate is standing by to tell us what's happening on the sports front. A very good morning to you.
Good morning, Elvis. Very interesting stuff happening. Some of it very sad and tragic news. But before I get ahead of myself, let me greet our viewers. Good morning to you too as well. And this is what we've got for you in the sports. All Black great and rugby legend Jonah Lomu has died, aged 40, while waiting for his second kidney transplant. And Bafana make it to the next round of the Russia 2018 World Cup qualifiers as they beat Angola 1-0 last night and 4-1 on aggregate. And the weather in Bangalore has the final word in the second test between India and South Africa as the match gets called off. All this and more, and I'll be chatting to Springbok greats Henny LaRue and Chester Williams later on about Jonah Lomu. Make sure you stick around for that at 11:30. Back to you, Elvis.
Thank you, Kendall. Our top story this hour. French security forces say 3 suspects have died, including a woman who allegedly blown herself up during a police raid at a flat in the northern Paris suburb of Saint-Denis in an operation linked to last Friday's terrorist attacks.
French police move in on more suspects linked to last week's gun and bomb attacks in Paris. The alleged mastermind of the slaughter is reported to be among the targets holed up in an apartment block. 2 suspects have been killed, one of them a woman who detonated a suicide bomb. 3 others have been arrested after a gun battle, and others are still inside. Local residents in the Saint-Denis area said sporadic gunfire was heard in the early hours of Wednesday. French broadcaster BFM TV said some officers were wounded during the operation. At least 129 people were killed in Friday's attacks, which Islamic State says it carried out. The massacres raised security concerns around the world. 2 Air France flights from the US were diverted late on Tuesday after anonymous bomb threats. The passengers and crew from both flights were evacuated. In a further development, France's military communications agencies released footage of what it said were airstrikes against Islamic State targets in Syria. Officials said a command centre and a jihadist recruitment centre in Raqqa were targeted. Other video emerged on Tuesday purportedly showing French Islamic State militants praising the Paris bloodshed and vowing further violence.
Now, for more on the Paris situation, we are joined via Skype by Amadou Ndeye, who is a resident of Paris. Bonjour, Amadou, and welcome.
Bonjour à vous, welcome.
Now, what can you tell us about this morning's raid in the northern Paris suburb of Saint-Denis?
I'm very scared because I wake up for going to work, but there was nobody outside. And I turned off the TV. And I see on the TV that we have 3 people who die here over there. And I'm just living across the street, just about 10 blocks. So I'm really scared. I don't know.
So it's just around the corner from where the incident happened?
Yeah, but the city is locked. Nobody can go outside.
How do you feel as a Parisian right now? Are you also very scared?
Yeah, I'm very scared because I don't know why people are doing this, and I really don't understand.
You are naturalized Parisian or naturalized Frenchman, but as a foreigner coming into France, does that make you feel uncomfortable being there right now?
Yeah, because my family is in Africa, West Africa, Senegal. They're also scared and asking me to going back to my native country because they don't understand why this thing happened to Paris.
We also believe that there was a tax on foreigners in Paris and in France for that matter. Can you confirm that and how does that make you feel?
It made me feel very weird because around me I have some people that I know die on Friday, and it's getting worse and worse because people are very, very scary and we can't do anything. But not going.
But what is the mood like among the foreigners in Paris that you've spoken to, your friends and perhaps relatives that you are discussing the situation with?
They're talking about Muslims and Islam. I'm Muslim personally, but I know Islam doesn't allow people to do that. So it's very uncomfortable to be a foreign, like to be Muslim or to be from another country, because they put it in the same garbage. They tell us that is so the Muslim will do that, or people who are not French who are not living here.
Now, there's new security measures in Paris. Has those new security measures affected you at all and other Parisians?
Yes, we're not allowed to go out, and we have to make sure that the windows are closed and the doors too.
Amadou, thank you so much for your time and good luck, my friend. That was Amadou Ndeye, a resident in Paris.
Yeah.
Now, the UN Secretary General has expressed concern about reprisals or further discrimination that is directed against Muslims in the aftermath of the Paris terrorist attacks. Addressing a Security Council meeting, Ban Ki-moon has warned that such action will alienate Muslims more.
He again offered his condolences to the people of France and reiterated the fairly broadly held view that no action targeting innocents could justify the acts of terror, whether in Paris, Beirut, Baghdad or elsewhere.
In the aftermath of other terrorist bombings in recent days in Beirut and Baghdad, and the apparent bombing of a Russian airplane, we see the continuing peril of terrorism, and indeed the mounting threat from Daesh. No grievance or cause can justify such acts.
He urged the world to come together to defeat terrorism within the confines of the rule of law, and use this platform to again link terrorist acts to a complex number of issues.
Violent conflicts and violent extremism are often rooted in a mix of exclusion, inequality, mismanagement of natural resources, corruption, oppression, governance failures, and frustration and alienation that accompany a lack of jobs and opportunities. Yet our responses have not caught up to these realities.
An integrated approach that focused more on prevention.
Sherwin Briceby's SABC News, New York.
An explosion in the Nigerian city of Yola has claimed the lives of more than 30 people and left dozens injured. The blast appears to have struck a busy market area where traders were closing up for the day. That explosion occurred at a fruit and vegetable market beside a main road in the Jameta area of Adamawa State. There was no immediate claim of responsibility, but the blast bore the hallmarks of the militant group Boko Haram, which has killed thousands over the last 6 years in its bid to create a caliphate or a state adhering to strict Sharia law in the northeast. Yola has twice been hit by deadly bomb attacks this year. Back home here, the historic relationship between South Africa and the Netherlands was strengthened further with the signing of trading contracts in Johannesburg last night. The Dutch Prime Minister, Mark Rutte, told the business community about his country's wish to increase the current €3.3 billion investment into this country.
following the day of political engagements with President Jacob Zuma in Pretoria. It was time to tie business deal. 15 contracts signed, including the Square Kilometre Array Telescope, also known as SKA. Amsterdam, a strong ally of Pretoria, dating back to the struggle era when Netherlands backed the ANC.
I believe there's room for more. I had very productive meetings with President Zuma and members of his cabinet, and we decided to step up our cooperation even more. At the meeting, we signed bilateral agreements on a range of topics.
The Minister of Small Business, Lindiwe Zulu, encouraged by the Dutch investments as a two-way traffic that will see the country's investors pursuing opportunities in Amsterdam.
I just would like to take a step back because there must be a context of the relationship between South Africa and the Netherlands. The Netherlands supported us in our liberation struggle throughout, and we are happy that they are here today to assist us in the next step, which is now we are a democratic South Africa, and therefore we still need partners who also want to be equal partners with South Africa.
Rutte reminded South Africa that the countries share a common history that can also be turned into a common future.
Secretary to Parliament Gengezi Mgidlana says that money to pay for Parliament staff performance bonuses will have to be generated creatively. Last night, Nahau announced that the strike in Parliament had been suspended and all employees would return to work today. That's after Parliament agreed to pay staff performance bonuses as a percentage of their annual package. It is estimated that the performance bonuses will cost Parliament 50 million rand. Mgidlana says this will be a fine balancing act.
The beauty of the agreement, therefore, it's that it puts us in a position, at least as both parties at the union and management level, to move to the next step. It's not a perfect agreement. It's not an agreement that gives anyone in particular anything over and above another. It's an agreement that tries to look forward and recognizes the difficulties that are there in finding the solution.
South Africa, the continent's largest producer of maize, could be a net importer of maize for the first time in 7 years. Severe drought in parts of the country earlier this year has negatively affected maize crops. Grain South Africa estimate that government will have to import 770,000 tons of maize at a cost of more than 2.2 billion rand as farmers grapple with the worst drought in 23 years.
We are short about 750,000 tons of the past crop, and we have imported about 500,000 tons thus far. Most of it is yellow maize. I think there was only one cargo of white maize, but there's plenty of stocks available in the world. But obviously we would have preferred not to import that, but there won't be a shortage of food. But at the moment, the farmers need to plant, especially to the eastern side of the country, you know, Mpumalanga, KZN. Those areas need to plant, the Eastern Free State, and their best period or window of opportunity to plant is actually concluded in the middle of November. And we haven't had rain, and the farmers have planted despite the fact that there wasn't rain. So the last few days we had 10 millimeters or so, and that might, let the maize plants just survive. But I think it is very late for this season, and if they don't plant now, they will get frost like in April and maybe end of March, and this is why the farmers can't plant later than this in the east.
News for now. We'll be back after the break.
The road to greatness is not an easy one. It's rough, tough, and full of barriers. And there's only one way to master it. Never, ever stop. effortless. The all-new Audi Q7.
Welcome back. You're with Newsroom. Time for us to take a regional look at what's making the news around the country now. The Salt Plaatje municipality in Kimberley in the Northern Cape says there'll be no more water disruptions there. Kimberley taps have been dry from Friday last week until Monday this week, following the maintenance of the water supply infrastructure there. More than 45,000 households and businesses were affected. The water cuts come at a time of a current heatwave. The Salt Plaatje municipality conducted further work on the two main supply pipelines that delivers water to Kimberley from Riverton Purifications Works. The phase entailed the replacement of valves on Saturday and Sunday. Water was then restored on Monday. It was the second time this year that the municipality has cut water for an entire weekend there. Now I'm joined by Sello Machi this morning. Very good morning to you, Sello. Thank you for joining us.
And thank you for the opportunity.
Sello, tell us, why is it necessary to perform this maintenance, particularly as it was for the second time in such a short space of time, and then during a current heat wave?
Oh yes, these developments are actually as a result of a commission a study that we commissioned regarding the whole picture of water in Kimberley, from the extraction point in Vaal River to the taps. It's not actually the second time that we did this maintenance, but it's part of the bigger picture of ensuring that we manage our water resources better, and also that we are able to put our infrastructure at its best. By the way, the study that was conducted did indicate that we had high water losses, and also there were issues of bulling. The first one that we did in July was actually part of the bigger picture of really assisting with the infrastructure, which was looking at improving the quality and the infrastructure itself.
Now, the work on the infrastructure, you happy that it was successful, and do you expect more maintenance to happen there in the future?
Well, thus far we have already done a lot of work. We are very much happy regarding what has transpired. For example, we have already installed zonal meters in some areas, and we have like the first phase. This was the second phase. Mind you, Kimberley is in a very unique position that our water resource it travels almost 16 kilometers. And having said so, we have to ensure that the pipelines that deliver water to Kimberley are always at its best. Now, for now, we are quite honestly happy. What is happening now is that the next phase would be to have smaller isolated maintenance and repair work. The ones that you're referring to actually was replacement of valves that have been there for the past 30 years.
Now, Silo, the residents there around, they've complained over the weekend. They say the water tankers provided were too small, which meant that they had to wait very long and they had to stand in very long queues. What do you say to them?
Well, that is really quite unfortunate. Before we went on to do this replacement and maintenance of this maintenance work, we had gone extensively out through the media, social media, to ensure in all languages that are spoken in the city to inform the general public and residents that we will be embarking on this particular exercise, and we requested that they should prepare enough water to be able to survive for the weekend. Now, as part of the contingency plans that we did, we had actually had JoJo tanks that were placed throughout the city, and others, we had about 6 that were on mobile trucks, that including our emergency services that were going all around the city to supply. We were monitoring the situations led by the Executive Mayor, Kagiso Mulusi, and the Municipal Manager, Kula Makawari, who were actually in charge of this process. At some stages, unfortunately, we can also report to you that some were vandalized, some of these JoJo tanks were vandalized and others kind of destroyed. But we were able to manage the situation.
What were some of the other challenges that you guys had with regards to the contingencies?
Well, as we speak now, we are happy that the repairs and replacement of these valves is 100%. We did have a delay for about a day in terms of our plan, which was quite a bit a challenge. But as we speak, currently, the townships and areas of Roodepan and Platfontein are being supplied. The major challenge now is to rebuild the storage capacity levels at the Newton Reservoir. And having said so, the Newton Reservoir supplied the high-lying areas of the city, and we have what we may call kind of load shedding, because the capacity, usually the capacity of the storage is about 261 million liters of water that we store. And for now, the levels are a bit down. And as you would understand, is that we haven't been, due to the operation that we had, the levels have gone down. At normal rate, at full capacity, we stand at 16 feet. For now, we're hovering about 8 and 10. But what we will do, and this is only affecting about a quarter of the city, what we're looking at to build the capacity, I mean the storage levels back to normal, is to start with the process of shutting down water at night and releasing water in the morning. Fortunately, and this will, the effects or the benefits of this is that we are able now to manage our resources properly. We are able to isolate the dams where we store the water, to be able, unlike before, the situation before quite really urban was bad, because should anything happen to either the pipe or one of the storage tanks, the whole city should be shut down. For now, should anything happen on one of the pipelines, we are still able to, it's more what you would say that security of supply is much better. And also in terms of the blue drop status that we are to implement, is that we can close one of there's 4 dams. We can close one dam at any given time, get it cleaned up, and start putting water again, and go to the next one. But as we speak now, the summary is that the town areas of Kimberley are struggling, and that is because of the pressure tower. We need to have enough volume in order to supply the high-lying areas. But the areas that I mentioned earlier on of Khalishiwe and which is the biggest area, and the Roodepan, including Platfontein, they get their water directly from the main supply lines from Riverton.
And the cost of this operation, how much did it cost the city?
Well, it runs into a couple of millions of rands, and this is almost 2 years into the making now. One of it was also to correct the billing system. Not that the billing system was incorrect, but there were people who were not really on the system, and we had to trace them because they were using water without paying. And also, like I mentioned, the issue of zonal metering, and also the issue of having to replace these valves around the city. The spin-off to this whole thing is that we will definitely be able to now manage and reduce the water losses. It wouldn't, as you are aware, other cities around the country are battling with water, that there is no water, the levels have gone down. Now we are trying to ensure that the least that we have is better managed. It wouldn't help when we process or purify water and 50% of it end up on the stormwater drainage system. We are better. In actual fact, the inconvenience that we had now, which is almost for 5 days when you compare to the one of July, is much better, and we will actually be saving. The saving comes at the level of reducing the wastage of water.
Now we see rain is starting to fall around the country a little bit, which is good news, and the outlook for the rest of the week is quite good. Do you expect your water storage facilities, your dams and so forth, to get some relief in the next 7 days?
Well, that will be a welcome boost. Quite honestly, what we've seen from our experience is that when there is rain, immediately the level goes down. As you know, Kimberley is a very high, hotly area, and the reality is that the heat wave has also affected us. The current weather patterns are not really good for us, but we need to survive. And we also pray, like everybody throughout the country, to say that we should get rain, because as the previous guy indicated, that it's also becoming late for the farmers. But the reality is that we need the rain desperately.
Silomatsia, thank you for joining us this morning from the Sol Plaatje municipality, coming to you live from our Kimberley studios. They've managed to overcome a crisis there with regards to water over the weekend. They talk about maintenance, routine maintenance. Well, it's a problem, water shortages around the country here in South Africa right now. It's being addressed. It's getting better. Rain is starting to fall. The weather outlook is also a little bit better for the next 6-7 days. Moving on, high electricity costs are threatening businesses in Ermelo in Mpumalanga. Owners say they're being billed well above the normal tariff. Some claim this is forcing them to close shop. A new billing system was introduced there in 2012.
With bread a staple food for many, days are busy at Bora Bora. But the bakery is on the brink of collapse. It owes the municipality about R500,000 for electricity accumulated over the past 3 years.
They don't want to write off that hundred of thousands of rands that was stacked up on my account. It's almost $500,000 they have against me. So that bring my whole cash flow taken away from me. So I'm almost now at the point that we're going to close down as a business that was running here for 13 years.
42 people were employed at the bakery, but the owner was forced to retrench half of them.
It is very painful to lose a job. Jobs are scarce these days.
When payday comes, there is no money to pay us because of the electricity problem.
Some businesses are now opting for solar energy.
The municipality some years back removed the meters in the electric boxes at businesses secretly, without any communication, which is against the NERSA regulations. They put new meters in, and a month later, businesses then found that their accounts, in some cases, had gone up 10 times what it used to be previously. The dispute has been running since then, which is now 3 years. They seem completely unable to bring an end to what the problem that they are in actual fact have caused. Msukulikhwe municipality is now the biggest threat to the economy of Ermelo.
The municipality denies overbilling business owners.
Whatever the municipality will charge as a tariff to the community, whether business or residential community, it is based precisely on what NERSA as a regulator would have approved. So anything out of that line by anyone amongst our officials, it would be a very, very unfortunate mistake that can have to be immediately dealt with and addressed, obviously, through the office of the accounting officer, the municipal manager.
The matter has since been taken to court and the Public Protector's Office. Moili Maslela, SABC News, Ermelo, Mpumalanga.
Well, that wraps up our look at what's happening around the regions here in South Africa. After a short little break, we'll get a complete update on the sports front from Kendall Mahamati. See you then.
For victory requires intense effort and teamwork. When you get to it, there is no turning back, because all eyes are on you. When it's action time, nothing should stand in your way. Sports Live tackles and analyzes all the sport action. This is the home of all your sport news, updates and more. Sports Live weekdays at 8:30 p.m.
Good morning and welcome back. I'm Kendall Mahamati and I've got your sports on AM News. We start off this bulletin with some tragic news about Jonah Lomu. Now, New Zealand Prime Minister John Key says the thoughts of the entire country are with the family of rugby legend Jonah Lomu, who passed away sadly at the age of just 40. According to New Zealand Rugby CEO Steve Tew, they probably would not have the commercial clout they have if they had not had Jonah Lomu pulling on the famous All Blacks jersey. Tributes have been pouring in for the wing, who died at the very young age of 40 just last night. Lomu, who scored 43 tries in 73 matches for New Zealand between 1994 and 2002, had been diagnosed with a rare and serious kidney condition. Despite his health problems, he'd been working in the UK during the recent Rugby World Cup.
Jonah Lomu, seen here in London in September, was waiting for a second kidney transplant when he died on Wednesday at the age of 40. During his career, he played 63 tests on the wing for New Zealand, scoring 37 international tries. Lomu was plucked from obscurity as an 18-year-old by All Blacks coach Laurie Mains. He found the transition from loose forward position he played at school to the wing difficult. In the end, his pace and power changed the wing position, with the traditional lightweight flyer all but vanishing from the test game. He had a kidney transplant in 2004 because of nephritic syndrome. The ravages of the disease began to affect his performance in 1998, although he still made the World Cup squad the following year. He was undergoing dialysis and waiting for a second transplant when he died on the 18th of November.
The class of 95, who knew and met Jonah Lomu on the field of play, is Henny Leroux. We touched base with him on Skype, and hopefully he's available to talk to us right now. Henny, good morning to you, and thank you very much for joining us.
Hi, Kendall.
Henny, first things first, when the news broke this morning, how did you feel?
Very saddened, devastated by the reports. It is definitely something that was unexpected, although we knew that Jonah had some kidney issues and problems. It wasn't expected at all.
Now, what are the biggest memories you've got of Jonah Lomu, considering that he's known worldwide and he really did set the 1995 World Cup alight?
He certainly did. He was an enigma at the time. He was well researched and revered. His ability with ball in hand was something exceptional. He turned into a global icon during the 95 World Cup and made himself an international superstar and a legend. He was an inspiration to many players. His pace and power and size was something to behold. And he was very humble, off the field and on the field. He demanded the utmost respect from his opponents.
Now, did he really change the way rugby is played? Because a lot of people have said he's an absolute legend and he did change the way of rugby is played. Do you think so?
Well, I think more in the sense that he changed the game from a professional point of view. It was at that stage where the game was amateur, and it needed the likes of Jonah Lomo and those individual players to bring sponsors into the game and put money into the game, which wasn't part of the makeup previously. And it was as a result of these players who had the unique ability to draw sponsors to the professional game that made his position as unique as and as important as what it was at the time.
So in a nutshell, you say that his legacy is exactly that, actually helping people to see the importance of professionalizing the game.
Certainly, he played a big role in that, and I think he drew a lot of sponsors to the game, and as a result, changed the way that people or companies who have got money and want to invest in sport look at individuals and obviously support sport.
Henny Leroux, I want to thank you very much for talking to us about your memories of this great man of world rugby. And we do hope that as the day goes on and as the days goes on, you feel our commiseration.
Thank you very much, and condolences to him and his family there.
Thank you very much for that, Henny. That was Henny Leroux, class of '95 World Cup winner. He played for the Springboks, and he's also played personally against Jonah Lomo in the field of play. Now, moving on to other sports news, Kevin Anderson has had a year to remember. He won 2 sets off the world number 1 Novak Djokovic in a very tough 5-setter at Wimbledon, this after winning at Queen's. He then had a wonderful run at the US Open where he shocked world number 2 Andy Murray in a 4-setter before losing to Stan Wawrinka in the quarterfinals. Now, to talk to me about this is his coach, Neville Godwin. Good day and welcome back.
Hi, Kendall. Thank you so much.
Right. Now, this man, Kevin Anderson, that we're talking about right now, what has changed to actually get him to the point where he is? Because all along, he's been hovering around about the number 15 or so, and all of a sudden he broke into the top 10 this year.
Yeah, it was a really big breakthrough year for Kevin. He's a very hard worker. I mean, everybody knows this. It's very well documented. He's very disciplined, and he's always set himself goals. His career's always been on an up and up, and last year he finished the year at number 16 in the end of 2014, and this year he touched at number 10 the week of Shanghai, and he's actually finished the year at a career high, well, career-ending ranking of 12. So this has been a fantastic year for us.
No, fantastic. And one of the things about actually getting to number 10 is the difficulty of getting into the top 10 and actually staying in the top 10. Obviously, 2 different things.
100%, it is. It's one of the echelons or pinnacles of world sport. To get into the top 10 in tennis is really a massive milestone. It's all about consistency, and that's one thing that Kevin really did well this year. He cut out a couple of the bad losses. He created a few opportunities that he could have done a little bit better in. But, like we spoke about at the end of the year, it's a great opportunity that we put ourselves in the position where he's in the position to win matches and take himself further and get himself higher up the rankings.
So when is it that he actually got himself into the right groove? Was it the Queen's tournament, or was it at Wimbledon?
I think Queen's was very much a starting point. He had some really good matches before that. He lost a tough match to Richard Gasquet at the French Open, and he had to sit down and we had to think about a couple of things, and he really started off well, and he saved match point actually in the first round of Queen's against Leighton Hewitt. And from that point onwards, he really started to play a little bit more positive, a little bit more aggressively, which is something that he knew he had to really do, and it forced him to do that. He had some great results, unfortunately losing to Andy Murray in the finals of Queen's, but that really kicked him on to play the way he played at Wimbledon in one of his most famous matches, which was against Novak Djokovic.
Yeah, fantastic, because we just saw Novak Djokovic playing against Roger Federer, one of the most storied rivalries out there. And we're hoping to see more of the same, but with a different name up there, maybe Kevin Anderson. What do you have planned for going into next year? Are we trying to get Kevin Anderson back into the top 10, top 5 maybe?
Yeah, I mean, the goal is top 5, and he really has signed up, and he believes that he's good enough now. He's had three different top 10 wins this year. He beat Stan Wawrinka this year. He beat Kei Nishikori, and he obviously beat Andy Murray, as you said, in the US Open to make him get through to his first quarterfinals of a Grand Slam. So that was a massive for him, and he wants to push through. He wants to be challenging himself to winning 500s, to winning 1,000 events, and getting through consistently into the quarterfinals or semifinals of Grand Slams.
He's going to be playing in the Chennai Open at the beginning of 2016. I think it's the first time that he's actually in the Chennai Open. He must be quite excited about that.
Yeah, Kevin he always looks forward to traveling around the world and going to tournaments and places that he hasn't been to before. It's one of the massive benefits of being a professional tennis player. You get to travel a lot, and you know, there's many times there's more than one tournament in a week, and so a lot of the guys like to play the different tournaments. Obviously, they have their favorites that they tend to go back to year on year. But, you know, it'll be a nice challenge to go to India.
Now, being in a circle of Kevin Anderson's camp, does he have a favorite surface?
Well, his results have tended to be better on hard court, and obviously this year he had a fantastic season on grass. He tended to not like grass so much before, but last year he had a really good result at Wimbledon. This year, obviously, with 2 great results at Queen's and Wimbledon. And he's starting to like that better, and he's starting to understand a little bit more about his game all the time. He's always someone who's willing to learn, and he wants to make improvements, and he wants to challenge himself to beat the top guys. So he did that consistently this year, and that's something he'll be looking to take into next year.
Looking at his current opponents, they're all around the same age as he is, in the 28s, around there. Is he peaking at the right time? Is he going to be looking to carry on his career as far as he can go, of course? But is his body going to hold him up to go beyond where Roger Federer is, for example?
Well, you know, Kevin, obviously, as we all know, is 6'8", so he has a completely different body shape and body type to what Roger Federer does. He's very disciplined about looking after his body. He's employed full-time physios to help him with that sort of thing, and he does have a complex body, being 6'8", and the way he moves, it does put a lot of stress on his knees. He's had documented elbow injuries in his life, but that's all taken care of because he has someone with him all the time. So he'll be looking to go as far as he can. He's feeling fresh. He's only been on the tour for 7 to 8 years. So he doesn't have a lot of back stuff that's sort of hurting me. When he had a really good college career in the University of Illinois, and that's inspired him to really go on and learn his trade more.
Now, quick question. Before I let you go, I'd be remiss not to ask you this question. A lot of South Africans are quite keen to find out whether Kevin Anderson would possibly relook playing for South Africa in the Davis Cup. I need to find out. Where is it going to happen? Is it in the cards?
Well, Kevin's week in, week out, he represents South Africa. He is very proud South African, and what a lot of South Africans don't know, because I know he's had some negative publicity about not representing South Africa in the Davis Cup, and there's people saying, oh, you know, he's going to represent the US. That's not the case. In tennis, you're not allowed to represent 2 countries. So it was never an option that he was going to go represent the US. And he's always said to his crews, you know, I'll always assess every Davis Cup tie one at a time. And he's never gone away from that. Okay. And a lot of it depends on the scheduling and where he's got to play. But his main priority is to represent South Africa week on week. And he's looking to put himself in the top 10 in the world consistently. And that really will put South African tennis on the map.
Very good answer. Very good answer. Which means that we could possibly look forward to maybe someday, could happen, lots of ifs and buts, but lots of provisos that Kevin Anderson plays. Neville Godwin, thank you very much, and congratulations on a fantastic year with Kevin Anderson.
Thanks so much for having me on the show, Kendall.
All right, now that was Neville Godwin, the coach for Kevin Anderson, who's done extremely well this particular year. Now, staying with tennis news, 3rd seed Roger Federer of Switzerland caused a major upset at the ATP World Tour Finals in London, England last night. Federer defeated top seed and world number 1 Novak Djokovic of Serbia in the second round-robin clash at the elite tournament.
With 4 losses from 6 matches between the two, the odds were not on Federer's side. But the Swiss maestro was evidently not too fazed about statistics and opted to rather focus on maintaining the level of play which has earned him the status of tennis legend. In the first set, both players managed to hold on to their serves until the 12th game, when Federer finally secured the breakthrough to clinch it 7-5 in 45 minutes.
Exquisite feel from Federer at precisely the right time.
Federer kept his momentum going in the second set, and he broke Djokovic in the second game. Although the Serb broke back straight away, he only managed to hold his serve one more time. Federer bagged the set 6-2 and the match to bring an end to Djokovic's 23-match winning streak and to qualify for the semi-finals of the event. Earlier, Japanese 8th seed Kei Nishikori overcame a dismal opening performance against Djokovic to claim victory over Czech 6th seed Thomas Berdych. Nishikori let an early lead slip and saved a breakpoint in the decider before recording a hard-fought 7-5, 3-6, 6-3 win in 2 hours and 23 minutes. Liesl Zankel, SABC News.
Now, news that a lot of South African football fans have been talking about all morning and all night. Bafana Bafana head coach Sheikh Mashaba says looking forward to qualifying for the 2018 World Cup in Russia. This after South Africa secured a 1-0 win in the second leg of their round 2 tie with Angola to progress to the third and final round of qualifying for the finals. It was a lackluster performance by the hosts at the Moses Mabhida Stadium after they beat the Angolans 3-1 in the first leg on Friday in Benguela. Now, a number of chances for the visitors went a-begging, mostly due to lack of composure in the box. Now, later on, an own goal midway through the second half by Angola's Manucho was the difference, which saw Bafana qualify for the next round. There were 53 countries when qualifying began. Now there are just 20 that will compete for one of just 5 places at the Russia finals. Nigeria advanced after beating a stubborn Swaziland 2-0. Ghana also had to dig deep against the Comoros Islands after winning 2-0. To date, in the continent's qualifying, 165 goals have been scored from 66 matches. The 20 teams will be drawn into 5 round-robin home and away groups of 4 teams each, and the 5 group winners will qualify for the 2018 FIFA World Cup in Russia. FIFA have yet to set a date for the draw. And that's where we leave it with the sports. It's now time for the weather across the continent of Africa.
It's a beautiful day, but it's a sad day. It's Jonah Lomu passed away, the great Jonah Lomu. Forever will be connected with South Africa. Kendall, South Africa was the place where Jonah Lomu broke out and really became that global superstar. World Cup 95, wasn't it?
I remember watching that match and thinking, I want to play rugby. I'm too short, but I wish I could.
Kendall, no, that was a pipe dream. Thank you. They say those who can do, but those who can't report about it. Yeah. So you report about it. Well done there. Good job. I mean, in full cry, there's been no greater sight in the game of rugby other than Jonah Lomu. But we've asked the question today, Elvis. We've asked our viewers the question, and
you remember Jonah Lomu? And let's see what the viewers has got to say. This one from Zatani Similani says. I remember Jonah Lomu very well destroying teams during the 1995 Rugby World Cup here in South Africa. May his soul rest in peace. And what a wonderful sight that was, 1995.
And, oh, gee, give me the difficult name, why don't
you?
Sefene. Reckons SABC Newsroom. May his soul rest in peace. What I remember was him running over, unfortunately, Michael Catt.
I'm black.
On his way. You are. On his way to scoring a fantastic try. And I think that lit up a lot of schoolboys' eyes. Say, wow.
You know, I can't tell you what Sir Gavin Hastings told me after he ran over Gavin Hastings at Loftus in the quarterfinal before that match, because he was swearing, but he was pretty much in a hospital blanket lying in the sick bay down at Loftus. He said he's a big another bee. It was a classic moment.
And that was when the truck ran over you. That was Jonah Lomu. He would destroy his opponents.
Yes, we remember him. But we also remember Paris today, and of course, okay, this one from Adet. He said, at SABC Newsroom, well done on interviews with French citizens, harsh reality of human impact, personalised, feel the pain of the real people. Elvis, good job there on that interview you did in the 10 o'clock slot and 11 o'clock slot, speaking to people in Paris about the impact that it's had in their lives. Then Chris talks about...
Well, it says everybody tends to forget that the problems in the Middle East started with Saddam Hussein in Iraq.
Yeah, no, it started with them attacking Saddam Hussein. Weapons of mass destruction, Chris.
Which was never found.
It was never found. They're still looking for it.
This one from Paul Burma says, all terrorism is a result of American and European decision taken previously on foreign policy.
Yes, and those decisions very much deal with going into sovereign lands and setting the tone there. But we'll leave it at that today. From us, it's been a great show. We really enjoyed it today. Thank you to Kendall Mahamati and Elvis President, myself. We'll see you again tomorrow. Ciao.
Ciao for now.
Become